the Heritage Foundation, calling the people or criticizing Carlson a venomous coalition. Shapiro, Lindsay, Walsh, Tucker, all these people are now in a sort of civil war, if you will, a battle for the soul of the Republican Party, of MAGA, of conservatism. Are there no enemies to the right? Tonight, I brought some right-wingers on, and we're going to find out what they think about this and what their thoughts are. And we're going to start with Mr. Counterpoints. Give us what you got.
Yeah, I think no enemies to the right is exactly how we ended up in this mess in the first place. For those of you who are living under a rock, MAGA has been sprinting in the wrong direction for a long time. They've backed a cult with Donald Trump, and now they've been hoisted by their own petard. So I would argue that the exact same thing could happen with Nick Fuentes, where with Nick Fuentes, they're basically begging to be brought into the political limelight, beaten with their own rhetoric, destroyed in elections. And I mean, I think if we go down this path, then I've been screaming about this path for a decade. If we keep going down this path, it's going to be absolute destruction for the right wing and the Republican Party.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion as we go. We're going to give it to Lactoid. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess my position on this is pretty nuanced. I watched the whole debate, or the whole, not really a debate, sort of at points. I watched the whole interview where between Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes. And the first thing is, I thought it was an incredibly interesting interview. And I also, the second thing I noticed was how much disagreement there actually was and how comfortable Tucker Carlson was at openly challenging Nick Fuentes' beliefs. No, he wasn't screaming about it. He wasn't dropping, neither one of them were dropping slurs. It wasn't a blood sports debate, but it was a debate. It was not substantive agreement on many of the points that were brought up between the two, especially when it came to Jews and identity politics in general, and what the kind of purpose of their religion is when it comes to governance. Those were some of the main points of contention, and really, I think the main points that Nick Fuentes gets criticized for, and Tucker Carlson pushed back, and he did so respectfully, but he did so, I think, convincingly. At least in a way that I thought was convincing. And so I guess focusing specifically on this debate, I don't see what Tucker Carlson did was wrong. I think that the movement to try and go after Tucker Carlson for doing this, to have a conversation with somebody who, whether we like it or not, does speak for a lot of people. The decision for Tucker Carlson to have this person on kind of echoes a little bit of what Nick Fuentes was talking about in the first part of the interview, which is they're just trying to silence us when we're trying to have a discussion. I don't think that's the right way. I think it's good to have a discussion. I think it's good to respectfully disagree. I think that did happen during this debate. I think in the current feud, I would like both sides to take this position where, you're not going to try to destroy Tucker Carlson or destroy you can destroy Nick Fuentes for other beliefs he has, but not try to destroy Nick Fuentes for simply having this conversation. And also, I would like it somewhat vice versa as well. If Ben Shapiro, who I'm a fan of, wants to have a controversial conversation or interview or a debate or anything like that, I don't see why he should be taken down or eviscerated. I think it's just a bad idea.
Well, thank you for being here. We're going to get into it as we go, and I appreciate you. Let's give it to Ash. GelatinousRube, please. What are your thoughts?
Hey, so I watched the Tucker Carlson discussion as well, and the follow-ups with Dave Smith, Candace Owens, and the previous interview with Nick and Dave Smith. And I got to tell you, I'm seriously impressed and optimistic. I think Tucker made the best pitch for civic nationalism this century, something I forgot existed because the GOP, the neoconservatives, and religious right failed to preserve that proposition. They failed to preserve anything. But in spite of their milquetoast approach to losing gracefully, they're still slandered as racist, no matter how much distance they tried to put between themselves and legitimate white nationalists, anti-Semites, whatever have you. And I think it's exciting. I think it's good to take a new approach, finally, to just say, okay, well, what are they going to do if we actually bring these terrible people on and contrast our views respectfully, politely, but clearly contrast our views and see where we have common ground and what's not shared between us. I think it's good to reevaluate the conservative coalition to see whether or not we're actually going to have people who are invested in America's success or just the success of other countries. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic. There's a bunch of ways where it could go terribly, but I got to tell you, well, we'll leave that for later. I'm optimistic.
Okay, well, hopefully we're optimistic about this panel. We'll see how it goes. Well, thank you for being here, Ash, and I do appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, Ryan Mullally, please.
Hey, I'm Ryan. If you know me, you probably know me from talking about law or philosophy. And tonight I'm going to be talking with a head cold and instead just saying loopy stuff online. We'll see how that goes. I'm just trying. I'm a former teacher, so I'm trying to model good behavior is the way I would approach this. Like Wick floated this to me. I have not seen much of Fuentes' content, nor do I intend to see Nick Fuentes' content, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of people have a knee-jerk reaction when they get a topic like this. Like, you need to have a take. And what I told Wick was, let me watch the debate and get back to you. Because I'm not going to have an opinion about something I haven't seen just because of the names involved, right? And I watched the debate, and it really unfolded in two halves. And I don't disagree with the people who are optimistic about it. I think if the debate was only 1 hour and it was the first hour, then I would have said, you know what, that was a pretty good way to handle that conversation. But it had a second hour. And in the second hour, there were some approaches taken that I think exposed what Tucker was doing and also crossed a few lines for me. And I think that's the way that we should approach these conversations. It's not about, as frustrating as it is for me that people like Hassan and people like Fuentes are getting national coverage. You know, the cat's out of the bag. They are getting national coverage. You know, our little podcast tonight isn't going to change Tucker Carlson's viewership. But what we can do is we can have clear moral lines and clear understandings of where our team ends, so that when we see a conversation, we can listen to it, we can be critical, and when they cross the line, and I think the line was crossed in one particular place during that conversation that we can get into, we can call it out and say clearly, as interesting as the first half of the conversation was, there was a problem in the second half, and that's a problem for me, and be honest about that. And I think that's the way forward.
Okay. And with that, let's kind of get into it. I guess my first question based off that alone is, what specifically do you think line was crossed, or what lines were crossed? Where did it go too far for you? And Counterpoints, if you want to also jump in on there as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't worry, I got stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't want to like monopolize because I was just talking, but the first half, when they were talking about the fact that Fuentes basically lumps Jews together very casually and very dangerously when he speaks. And Tucker was pushing back on that from a Christian individualist perspective. That was fine in my mind. Like, Nick had a perspective, Tucker was pushing back on it. They weren't screaming at each other, but Tucker gave like very meaningful feedback against that position during that part of the conversation based on his beliefs and where he was coming from. I didn't have a problem with the way that happened. My problem happened in the second half. At one point, Fuentes, I think, was just tipping a hat to his kind of Groyper fans. And he goes, well, you know, this is a very important day. It's Stalin's birthday. And Tucker goes, why is that important? He goes, I'm a big admirer of Stalin. And Tucker goes, oh, we'll get back to that. But they did not get back to it. And that's a problem for me, because that's the Moat and Bailey, right? Where Fuentes shows his crazy card, like, I love Stalin, which is that's a fucking take, right? And Tucker says, oh yeah, we'll get back to it, but they never do. So Tucker looks saner than Fuentes. Fuentes gets to say that to a huge audience and kind of get away with it. And that is an area where I was like, oh, hold on, what's happening here? Now I'm a little bit suspicious of this conversation that before this point I was more or less okay with. So for me, that was the moment when I thought, oh, something's off in this conversation, and I'm happy to take there's a problem here on Wick show.
Yeah, and just backing up on that, I have no problems with conversing with contentious figures from spicy ideologies. Okay, I've had a conversation with Nick Fuentes that was a one-on-one. What I do have a problem with, though, is I have a problem with sanitization, cleaning up somebody's reputation and acting like even Lactoid said it earlier in this thing, which was they're trying to silence us and we're just trying to have a conversation. All you have to do is watch Nick Fuentes' content. He's not trying to have a conversation. He's trying to garner a cult-like fan base similar to Trump. He's trying to either be an authoritarian style leadership figure, or he's trying to find an authoritarian style leadership figure. And the way that he says this is the most sanitized way possible. He says that he wants to dispossess Jews collectively of power within the United States. And when you ask him for specific policies, or if you ask his audience for specific policies, they get real cagey and they get real Fed posty about it, where they're like, oh, well, I couldn't say that and all that kind of shit. So that exactly what Lactoid said is actually my beef with the conversation. If you're going to have a conversation with this motherfucker, you got to know his bullshit.
Sure. So I'll address both of them, I guess, in order. I just don't agree at all that the big admirer of Stalin part was even particularly relevant in the conversation. I know you're saying that it's sort of tipping his hat, which, by the way, I didn't even know that about Fuentes. I didn't know that he liked Stalin. That surprised me. But he did insinuate that that's a longer conversation, and it was, I think, really not pertinent to the story that Nick was in the middle of talking about, which is why Tucker said, hey, we'll get, that's a take, but we'll get back to that. Tucker clearly shows distaste on that. He clearly, he acts as though that's a crazy take, which it is. I don't think that's Tucker being nefarious when he doesn't get back to it. I think it's very possible that perhaps he didn't remember, or that it wasn't pertinent to the way the conversation was flowing, or that it would have opened up a whole can of worms that just wasn't relevant to the purpose of the interview. I don't see what exploring that particular question is going to that not exploring that question is necessarily indicative of some kind of malfeasance upon Tucker Carlson. The point from real quick, the point from you when you're saying, he's not trying to have a conversation, he's trying to develop a cult. You can say this about anybody who's trying to become a talking head, where they want to get big enough to be heard and to have people trust what they want to say. And you do see a trajectory oftentimes with a lot of people when it comes to them gaining power and then refusing to do debates or refusing to talk with other people that they disagree with, or et cetera, et cetera. You do see this happen. I think Vosh is a great example of somebody who encompasses this mentality. But if you want to front load this into, we're gonna start with the assumption that this person doesn't want to have a conversation, when they just talked about a whole story about how they were blackballed from politics because they were hypercritical of Israel, or in his words, he was saying he was critical of Israel. I think he's very critical of Israel, but being very critical of Israel is I don't think that's sufficient reason to be blackballed from politics. But Ben Shapiro does do this, right? Ben Shapiro is very defensive of Israel and has said some pretty crazy things about Israel in the past, and pretty openly very racist and negative things about Palestinians in the past, which he has since apologized for. But he is still very aggressive on this one subject. And I think what Nick Fuentes is saying is, wow, this person tried to cancel me in the past over these statements. And now when I sit down and have a conversation with Tucker Carlson, he's trying to cancel Tucker Carlson for having conversation with me, even when Tucker Carlson disagreed about the Jew question, right? Disagreed about the Jew argument. And I think Tucker Carlson did a fantastic job at disagreeing. I agree with Ash here that I think in a way that spurting out and being a left winger just wouldn't accomplish. I think he probably reached a lot of right wingers there that otherwise may have been more Nick Fuentes friendly into, hey, Tucker's kind of spitting some facts here. Yeah, Christianity does kind of have these foundations built within it. I mean, you're not going to win these people over with venom.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, once again, I feel like there's a lot of Trojan horsing, not going on you in particular, but I do think you're the target. So just as an example, with this thing, You can watch Nick's own content about 2016 and 2017. He was blackballed in December of 2016. In spring of 2017, he's talking about like, oh, you know, I got kicked out of college. I went home. I was talking to my parents and I was trying to red pill them on the Holocaust. And I was trying to red pill them on Hitler. And I was trying to red pill them on Stalin. So he's doing this thing where he's going on Tucker and he's acting like he's this like cute, uwu, kawaii, soft boy who got canceled for just being a little curious about Israel, just asking a few questions. Meanwhile, if you actually go to his real show, he's like, no, like he's not a Nazi, because a Nazi is a pagan, atheist, German nationalist. That's why he's not a Nazi. But he's a Christian theocrat, authoritarian race realist, and he's unrepentant on his own shows. What I'm telling you is that the 2 hours that you watched on Tucker Carlson was the cleanest, nicest way he has ever communicated his ideas ever. And what he's trying to do, that Tucker Carlson helped him do, is sanitize his ideas to a large conservative audience so he can gain momentum amongst the youth. And then he can be the next Tucker Carlson, but he can push Christian supremacist, anti-constitutionalist authoritarianism. And what's frustrating about this conversation is I feel like he accomplished his mission in this conversation.
So building on what Connor just said, because I don't have like a deep background on Fuentes, right? The reason that the Stalin comment stuck out to me, and I think it should stick out to people, is because I agree with Lactoid. I actually think the first hour, if you went in there and you didn't know a lot about Fuentes, and I didn't, and you listened to that, you're like, oh, this guy clearly has a bit of a race realist streak. This guy clearly wants to generalize to groups in an inappropriate way, and Tucker's pushing back on it, but it seems within the bounds of like a Joe Rogan style interview, which is just a thing that happens now, right? But then he dropped the Stalin thing, and I was like, huh, is that really a position? So I quickly Googled it, and it is a position. And he has the same position on Hitler. Now, if you make sweeping generalizations about the Jews, and you have very serious problems with the Jews, and you want to, you know, as you know, we talked about, has a lot of kind of, I don't want to talk about it, Fed post type policy prescriptions about the Jews, and then you follow that up with, I love Stalin and I love Hitler. Now a picture of you emerges that is somewhat different than the picture that came out in the first hour. So my problem with Tucker not picking up on that, Lactoid, to your point, because I actually agree with you about the first hour of the conversation. But my problem there is that's the sort of thing where if I'm being maximally charitable and I'm saying Tucker doesn't really know all the stuff that Connor knows about Fuentes, maybe he did, but I'm being maximally charitable, that comment was relevant. That's where you go, wait, hold on. Wait, what's happening here? But I don't. The reason I think
I really love murderous authoritarians
because it would have exposed too much about what Fuentes believes, and it was I think the goal of the conversation was to keep
Why do you think that?
a little bit saner. Well, because if you push on why do you love Stalin with the follow up, why do you love Hitler, and then you might need to revisit the first hour where they're talking about their need to, you know, categorize the Jews as one group, as Fuentes does. That starts painting a very different picture of Nick.
I don't think it does, because the whole first hour was already spent with Tucker Carlson disagreeing with Nick Fuentes. And if you're saying that Tucker Carlson had a obligation, that it was a malfeasance for him not to do this, that he had an obligation to bring the conversation back and have another hour conversation about the Jews, or the reasons why he is an authoritarian. I agree, he's like an authoritarian theocrat. I think that it's perfectly rational for an interviewer to just not make that decision. To say, okay, we have spent the whole first part talking,
but right? I do think it's to some degree negligent.
Okay, so you think it's negligent. I think it's reasonable. I think that if you make as good of points against Nick Fuentes' position that you have already, to the point where the audience is already on board, that you have spent an hour on that, where I think to any conservative watching that, Tucker Carlson seems more in line with their beliefs than Nick Fuentes. I think he just does. And it seems like you agree, Ryan, at least. And so what is the benefit there at that point of, okay, now you said some crazy shit about Stalin, which I think just on its face makes you kind of look bad by saying that, right? How many For America First conservatives really like Stalin? You know, not only is it particularly relevant, But I also think that there's a risk here of, okay, now that there's the risk of making the interview less, I guess, flowy by revisiting a conversation that was already had. But there's also a risk of giving him the opportunity to try and sterilize Stalin, to try to like put Stalin into some kind of like, oh, well, Stalin wasn't that bad because of X, Y, Z. I think that I think Nick Fuentes lost a lot of, maybe he didn't lose a lot of like his supporters, but I think a lot of people watching that are siding with siding with Tucker Carlson over Nick Fuentes.
But you're not seeing the path. Like the path. Okay, so here's the path. All right, this is for MAGA. This is America First. This is the Christian nationalist.
I want to get Ash in here too. He's been
absolutely, and I'm sorry if I'm very passionate about this, but I am very passionate about this. Here's the path. Okay, MAGA took, like, I don't care who you are. MAGA took a huge kick in the dick today. Okay, they just did, and MAGA was already frustrated because they feel like Donald Trump promised them the world, secure border, deporting, 20 or 30 million people, restoring the economy, cheaper prices, America First, all this bullshit. And they feel like they're not getting it. And what Nick Fuentes is trying to say, and what he's trying to tell his audience, and the more he gets sanitized and the more he gets moved into the mainstream conservative movement, he's going to say, constitutionalism is not enough. The American Republic is not enough. Your tepid tolerance of Jews and atheists and pagans and, secularists and hedonites and libertarians, it's not enough. We need a strong figure like Stalin, like Hitler, in order to actually lead the real America First movement. And they're going to do, like when I see J.D. Vance citing Curtis Yarvin, when I see J.D. Vance talking about being a post-liberal Republican, I don't think J.D. Vance is Hitler, at least, not yet. But at the same time, that's the kind of like power vacuum that Nick Fuentes either wants to step in himself or he wants a character that he admires to step into.
Okay, Ash wanted to get in on this, so I wanted to give him.
I think those are all reasonable assumptions, but like, here's the thing. There's no significant lefty input into this conversation aside from the chatters, and we could just ignore them. We don't need to indulge the theory of thought crime here. The conversation is not going to be aided by this. So I don't think that
I believe in thought crime, though.
I don't think intuiting that Tucker Carlson is being negligent or malicious in any way by not picking up on the Stalin conversation is appropriate. I don't think it's useful here. I think it's just more lefty bullshit that we just don't need to engage with. Because if Tucker Carlson had gone back in and say, wait, why do you like Stalin? And Nick could have replied, Nick could have either sanitized his own position and I don't know anything about his position on Stalin, so, forgive me. Could have either sanitized his own pro-Stalin position, assuming that's what it is, or could have doubled down on it, in which case Tucker Carlson could just go back to the first hour of the conversation and double down on his prescriptions. Hey, blood guilt is an anti-Western concept. It's anti-Christian. It's anti-American. We can't accept it. But that part of the conversation had already been done. And I've heard this kind of looping attack on somebody's sensibilities as if they are being disingenuous with you in the conversation. I've heard that labeled as a struggle session before, and it's extremely unproductive. You shouldn't do it. And I'm glad that Tucker didn't do it. You can loop back to Stalin on some other podcast, some other debate. This wasn't the repudiation of all Nick Fuentes' ideas. It's an interview. Because guess what? After the poor stewardship of the neoconservatives and the religious right, and now with Donald Trump as well, it is looking as if it's not clear exactly what conservative is going to be able to step in and actually offer us a path out of, economic destruction, demographic collapse, birth rate collapse. Take your pick.
Yeah, I know you're kind of making my point, but this is exactly what the fuck I'm saying.
I guess
is that Nick Fuentes is specifically saying, "I have the solution."
One at a time.
No. I would love to respond to exactly what he just said. Sorry, what did you say?
But you are scared of that, but not enough to actually change your approach to politics. And so that you have opened the vacuum for, and you collective here being the GOP previously, prior to the MAGA movement. That power vacuum is yours.
Okay. But I think that the failures of neoconservatism, conservatism, Bush era republicanism, and all that kind of stuff is actually not necessarily a failure of the philosophy or the ideals. I think it's a failure in execution. So, as an example, I think I'm neoconservative in many regards. I believe in republicanism. I believe in democracy. I believe in free societies. And I think that spreading them through American soft power and American military power is actually a good thing. That being said, Iraq is a total fucking disaster. It not only did it cost trillions of dollars in treasure, not only did it cost tens of thousands of American lives, not only did it cost hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives, but it effectively made America scared of its own shadow when it came to the world stage. And so that is not a failure of, is it principally good for America to be powerful on the world stage? That was a failure in execution. Same thing with, I would say, family values when it comes to the Republican Party. I still believe in family values. I still believe that most people should be monogamous, have kids, take care of their families, take care of their communities. However, I think that Republicans largely fail that ideal because once they get money and power, they like to have mistresses and secondary families. So for me, it's not that the ideals aren't good. It's that the execution is fucking awful. And I understand why people are pissed off about the execution, but that doesn't mean that we open up the floodgates to people like Nick Fuentes or their ideas.
And just
It does, unfortunately. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah,
You can say descriptively it does. I'm saying you don't have to hold the door open for them.
Yeah, I want to get Mullally in here. He's been trying to get in.
Yeah,
He's
one of the things about forming like political coalitions is you need to kind of figure out whether the people you're aligning yourself with have something close enough to your values that an alliance makes sense, right? On some level.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know Connor and Lactoid, sorry, Ash, I don't know you as well, but have had like a number of conversations about core values. We actually share a lot of core values. We have very different policy prescriptions in different areas, but the values are the same. So I feel very comfortable with that level of disagreement that we have because of the shared values. Now, in the first half of that conversation, Nick was playing pretty fast and loose with the rule that you have to treat people like individuals and you can't just blanketly make statements about a race, which is charitably not something, even being maximally charitable, not something I think is morally acceptable. But Tucker was pushing back on it, right? And I agree with you guys. I think that's all you can ask for. But when someone says, I admire Stalin in that context, like I fucking hate communism. I fucking hate communism. It is a moral evil, right? If I was having an awesome conversation with Lactoid about how based originalism is, and we were like, man, Justice Thomas is killing it. Justice Barrett is just crushing it. This originalist court is the best court ever. And then Lactoid goes, man, I agree with you. Also, I fucking love Stalin. I'd be like, well, what the fuck just happened? Like, that's not like a small red flag. That's a big ass red flag in a conversation about whether or not your values are compatible. And it seemed like the first half of the conversation, I don't think the values that Fuentes was expressing are compatible with mine, but I could see Tucker pushing back and trying to build bridges and making it make sense. But when you drop the red flag in there, then you have to go, wait, hold on. What the fuck just happened? This guy endorsed Stalin. Like, that's a different conversation now. And now if I don't say anything about that, now I'm letting that go. And that's very different. Like if that moment hadn't happened, I would have had a very different take on the first half of the interview.
And real quick, this is Ash of Creativity. I want to give you something more to respond to.
Hold on. That's not thought crime.
It is. Because your criticism is based on the fact that he didn't.
Hold on, one at a time.
Saying that I hold people accountable for the beliefs they express is not thought crime. That's just being a human being. There's tons of beliefs that I think are immoral. If someone says, I love communism, I'm going to say, you're fucking evil because communism is evil. If someone says, I'm a socialist, I'm going to be like, well, you shouldn't endorse evil because socialism is evil. There's tons of things I think are evil, but when someone says it's evil, it's not my job to be like, oh shit, you're endorsing evil. I'm not going to hold you accountable for your thought crime. Like I'm not saying you have to cancel him, but you You do obviously respond when somebody says, I endorse evil. Why the fuck wouldn't you?
So it's not a matter of response. If Lactoid had said something like that in the middle of your conversation about originalism, I think that would be pretty obviously bait because it's such a large red flag. So one, it's bait. Two, it could be genuine, but it's definitely still
It's
bait.
genuine.
Second, like, I don't know why. At best, you can call it a mistake.
Just real quick, does anyone here think Fuentes is being disingenuous when he says he likes Stalin?
No, he likes authoritarianism.
Yes.
He probably does. I mean,
he does. It's not.
Yeah, he probably does. He is a memer, right? I'm assuming he does, though.
No, he's anti-constitutionalist. He's authoritarian. He wants a dictator. It's not a joke.
People who want dictators, I'm rolling with the assumption that he probably does. But just because somebody likes dictators doesn't mean they like all dictators, right? I don't think Hitler was a big fan of Stalin.
Yeah, but he likes Hitler and Stalin.
He likes Hitler and Stalin, right? Which is like kind of bizarre. It's a very bizarre position. The conversation
was not an endorsement of Hitler and Stalin.
The conversation was not an endorsement. And Nick Fuentes didn't all he mentioned was, I remember it because December 18th was important to him. And then Tucker asked, well, why is it important to you? And he said, because it's Stalin's birthday. Like, I was an admirer of Stalin. Like, it wasn't actually relevant to the train of thought that it was being had. And Ryan, to use your hypothetical, if you and I are having a conversation about like originalism, and it's like very specific to the topic of originalism, and I'm in a train of thought about something, and it somehow comes out, like you inquire, and it comes out like, yeah, I actually, I kind of like Che Guevara. I kind of admire some things about him. And then anyway, I returned back to originalism. Like, you are perfectly fine to like look like, holy shit, I didn't expect that from you, which is what Tucker Carlson did. You can say that's insane. We should have a whole different debate on this. Wick does this a lot when, somebody, usually me, brings up some take that's like, gets some reaction. Oh, we're going to have a whole different show on that. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it doesn't. It all depends. Like, I think you're reading a little bit too much into this, this one Stalin quip. I do.
I just want to jump in briefly to say,
with all due respect,
I'll give you guys an out here because God, this is such a stupid thing to focus on for this conversation.
No, it's
totally
not.
Fucking useless. Tucker Carlson does agree with you because Tucker Carlson said, "I regret not pushing back against it," because he got feedback telling him, "Hey, you should have focused on this." And Tucker Carlson, who am I to disagree with him?
Okay,
he agrees
this is perfect. So Ryan has correctly, in my opinion, said if somebody says something that's so contrary to your principles, then you should be calling it out and you should be focusing on it. I agree with Ryan. Not only that, but you guys are pointing at Tucker, and you're just like, oh, Tucker, he's like a little sweet guy, and he was pushing back on the anti-Jew sentiment. Listen, the reason why I think Tucker had Nick on and gave him effectively, you say the first hour was like challenging him on Jew shit. For me, the first 45 minutes was biographical shit. Unchallenged biographical narration. There was almost no Jew shit in the first 45 minutes.
The first like 15, 20 minutes, yeah.
So anyways, I think first 45, but it doesn't matter. My Tucker Carlson, okay, is a contrarian, conservative paleocon, in my opinion. He's isolationist, while at the same time sweeping for like Dugin power politics. He sweeps for Russia. He sweeps for China.
Let's not get into Russia.
For authoritarianism. He talked about how America was a propositional nation in which you cannot hold people to individualist guilt. But at the same time, what he does is he does propaganda for Gulf states who are all about collective guilt and theocracy and authoritarianism. So for me, the reason why he might see Nick as an ally is because they're both geopolitically isolationist. So just because he said, "Oh, we disagree on whether or not America can be a civic nationalist nation," they still both agree on American isolationism and ethnogenesis and ethno-religious affiliation being okay for other nations.
So I want to give it to Mullally. I want to give it to Mullally, and then I want Lactoid to respond.
I'm newer to the internet than some of you guys, but like in my limited experience, what I've learned is that when you first start talking with someone, those conversations are really about figuring out the extent to which your values align and the extent to which it's going to be a debate or a conversation. And you kind of suss that out in real time. It's just a process that happens, right? And like the first time I talked to Fabian Liberty, like, you know, there was a bit of a feeling out at the beginning. We're like, well, what do we agree on? What do we not agree on? And then we figure out there's actually a lot of principles that we agree on, and there's some stuff I'm going to push back on, et cetera. And you work through the conversation. I don't mind that happening. And I'm not saying that like you can't platform the guy. Like that's kind of ridiculous. His platform's already really big. Like what are we talking about here? But I don't think that it's hard for me to extend maximum grace to Tucker ignoring that comment, because that comment is so different than what the conversation before was like in tone, and does seem like kind of a big reveal that maybe that person was approaching the conversation in a disingenuous way, and you should say something about it. Like Lactoid, like if the first time I met you, to give your example, go back to your example, if we were talking about how much we loved originalism way, and then you're like, man, Che Guevara's just based as hell. Holy shit, I love Che. You know, the reason I would want to stop is not because Che's relevant to the conversation, but because you are not the person I thought I was talking to. You are a different human, and you've alerted me to that. And that's something I should know before I continue down the rabbit hole of how awesome our shared beliefs are. Because when I say like, oh my God, originalism was so based, Lactoid so based, I just want to, you know, extend all my warm and fuzzies to Lactoid. If you're like going to turn around and then, you know, be like, man, Che Guevara and Hitler are just my idols, that might be something I need to know before I endorse you, right?
So I don't think Tucker endorsed him. And also, if you and I are again, if you and I are like firmly aligned on originalism, like the fact that I might hold this other crazy belief doesn't necessarily negate that specific thing that perhaps like is important to work on.
Would you work with him still? Just real quick, because this goes in my other.
Would I take Nick Fuentes' vote like on a candidate that I liked? Sure.
Well, no, work with him, because there have been people in this.
Depends in what context.
Not just like the bigger space, but even Rob Norris is like, I will work with Nick Fuentes in order to beat the Democrats. Is that something that you would do? Would you work with Nick Fuentes?
I mean, again, it depends on the context. Like if there is a, like here's a great example in which I would work with Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson. Let's say there was some political movement or like some kind of thing that was very narrowly tailored to opposing funding the war in Ukraine. Like the subject I obviously feel very strongly on. Pretty sure Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson probably agree in my position on this. My guess is
they do want to
sure
defund Ukraine. That's true. Yes.
Yes. So if it was a very narrowly tailored position on that, I could see myself working with them. Yeah.
Even
if
even
it
though
was,
he has just to be clear, like I've talked to Nick Fuentes before. He threatened to pipe on my house.
That's fucked
He's
up.
also declared a holy war on Jews. Like on his Rumble channel, he had a whole thing where he declared a holy war on the Jews. And you would work with that.
It was like 2022, but that wasn't the Tucker Carlson interview.
Let me, I guess, explain a little bit here.
What's the statute of limitations on holy wars against the Jews? I guess it's
more than 2 years.
It's not good. Here, look. Let me try to maybe explain
80
it this
years.
Way. I think at least, I like to think, people have told me that I am known for having relaxed conversations with people that I dramatically disagree with until they try to raise energy. This includes people that I think have ideologies that are worse than both Tucker Carlson and worse than Nick Fuentes. I think communists are actually more of a threat. I do. But yet, I think Democrats are a threat. But yet, I'm willing to have, not because I think their ideology is at all acceptable, or in some cases,
Democrats are a bigger threat than Nick Fuentes.
I think communists are. I don't know about like run-of-the-mill Democrat, probably not. But if you talk about like the communists and the kind of socialist movement that's happening, I do think this is a greater threat. But when I'm on Discord or when I'm talking to people or most of my personal friends, they are socialists. I just recently had a calm conversation with a friend of mine who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk, which I feel very strongly about. This was in public. We was sitting right across from them, and I had a calm conversation with this person, And I'm not like cutting this person off. I'm not isolating this person. If we have some kind of like future goal, I probably would still work with this person. But again, I think this person's crazy. I think their ideology is awful. I think it's dangerous, et cetera, et cetera.
This isn't
what you
like
guys, hold on real quick. What you guys are proposing, and the reason I used Che Guevara was for a very specific reason. Because in 1964, Face the Nation had an interview with Che Guevara. This is a guy that massacred thousands of people, that every communist you know has his picture up in their fridge or wearing shirts with this guy, this mass murdering psychopath that they worship. And Face of the Nation had an interview with him that was more of a Joe Rogan style interview where they asked him about his beliefs and his perspective and why he holds the positions that he did. And it's an incredibly interesting interview. And I'm glad that they did it, as opposed to, well, no, we have to turn everything into blood sports. Otherwise, it's being irresponsible.
No, and by the way, hold on.
I'm going to let you go in a second. But just to be clear, I didn't ask about interviews. I asked about working with him. And if Face the Nation had worked with Che Guevara, it'd be a different story. But go ahead.
Well, it depends on what. If it was like providing aid to starving kids, then it'd be fine with it.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to say. This isn't like your typical like lib shit panel or lefty panel where like you're not allowed to work with bad people or whatever. If Nick Fuentes wanted to go do a dog rescue in fucking Detroit and he said, "Hey Connor, let's go rescue some fucking dogs," I'll go rescue dogs with Nick Fuentes.
This is my point, exactly.
And same thing, like I do understand that Ash thinks that we're like Ryan and I are moral frogging specifically about the Stalin thing. I'm not saying don't have a conversation. I'm not saying don't have a softball interview. I'm not even saying don't like fuck up a softball interview. I'm saying be prepared to be criticized once you're done with your softball interview, because in my perspective, you were insufficiently prepared. And the kind of like dog whistly thing that I think Nick did in reference to Stalin, I think he's Trojan horsing in bad ideas. I do believe in freedom of speech. I do believe in freedom of conscience. So no, I'm not interested in canceling Tucker or canceling the next person who platforms.
But Ben Shapiro
Nick.
is.
But I'm going to give them shit for it.
Lindsay is, right?
Ben might be, but Ben said that he was just gonna talk shit, and if you want to conduct those interviews, conduct those interviews. He said that. I mean, he probably doesn't believe it, but he said it.
I'm skeptical.
I'm with Congress. I don't think
he did cancel his PBD appearance.
Yeah, I don't think you need to like call to cancel anybody, and I don't think Tucker did anything inherently wrong by having Fuentes on. I just think that in the first hour, I think he was doing a good job with the interview. And then after that, he did a bad job with the interview, right? And it's like, and I think, Ash made a good point. That's why he apologized. Like he fucked up. Now, maybe you can read between the lines about whether that's an honest apology or a kind of aw shucks thing. And I don't claim to know enough about Tucker to know that. But I think what's important is you can criticize someone for doing a bad job in an interview without it being like some kind of like woke left thought policing canceling thing. Like my point is, I think he let Fuentes sane wash a really insane point, and he shouldn't have done that. Now, why he did that, I don't know enough about him to claim that I have some theory of mind for him. Maybe others do, but that's still a fuck up one way. That's still a fuck up one way or another, right? And I think that we can have moral clarity about these things and say like, no, you know what, you should have said something more than you did, and that doesn't mean you have to lose your show. Like that's not in no way calling for that.
Intellectual curiosity is sufficient as a pretext in order to have a conversation with a fucked up person. Like people brought up that like a Tucker interviewed a cannibal from Africa or some shit. Okay,
yeah, that'd be super fascinating.
Like I'm sure it's a fascinating fucking interview, but if the dude was like, "Hey man, you should try it sometime," it was like Tucker was like, "I will." Like I'd be like, "Okay, Tucker, that's gonna be
hilarious."
Well,
that'd be awesome. It would be fucked up. It would also be hilarious.
Okay,
and
worthy of criticism. I actually disagree. Is the point.
No. This is the joke. Like, I'm sorry. How do you guys think that? Do you guys think that there is an obligation to have contentious interviews? Because what it seems to me is that, and now I'm glad that you guys are on the position, I guess, opposite of what I think a lot of people are, which is and what I guess thought you guys are coming into the conversation with, which is that there should be some kind of like canceling or deplatforming or like rejection of Tucker Carlson because he did this interview. If instead all we're saying is, yeah, like he had the interview, it was a good interview to like mostly, I do think that like I got some criticisms here and there, though. He should have pushed back stronger here. He should have, said more there. Fair enough. You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want about the interview. If you think that like it would have been served better. Yeah, but it seems like the point was broader than that. It seems like the point that I was hearing before was that actually Tucker Carlson is complicit, whether negligently or intentionally, in an actual plot here, like a grander plot by Nick Fuentes and other Groypers and other people on that side to like take over American discourse. And what I'm concerned about is it seems like if we're going to roll with this narrative, like how do you have a non-contentious conversation? Are you allowed to have like a Joe Rogan style conversation with contentious people? Should Face of the Nation have had that conversation with Che Guevara where they ask about the relationship with America and they ask about communism?
Yes. Okay. So hold on. So here's the thing. We're talking about like I'm gonna separate like morality from legality real quick. Okay. Legality, I think you should be able to do any of this shit.
Yeah, we all agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then from a moral perspective, I think that you're bringing up an interesting point that if you have a, let's say you're interviewing Adolf Hitler in 39, or you're interviewing the Ayatollah, like people actually gave Tucker shit because he did a softball interview with the Iranian leader or something like that, or president, I don't know. But the point is that like you can get more information from a softball interview because if you come in hard and you're antagonistic and you're pushing them on shit and all that kind of stuff, they're going to shut down. They're going to be defensive. They're not going to give you information. And so I don't have any problems in principle with a softer tact in an interview. However, what I do have a problem with, which I do think Tucker is guilty of, and I'm trying to wake you up to this fact, is that Tucker sane washes contrarian figures who are anti the current American establishment. Now, maybe as a libertarian, you like that. Maybe you like that he has Iranian authoritarians or Russian dissidents or Russian philosophers onto his show. But what I'm saying is, I would want, if somebody claimed to be an American patriot, if somebody claimed to love this country, if somebody claimed to love this Constitution or love the Constitution of this country, I would want them either in the interview challenge the authoritarian biases, or post-interview say, I am not of the same political tribe of this person. Here is how we differ, and make that distinction clear. And I do not think that Tucker has done that. And I don't think he will do that, because I actually think that he wants to cross-pollinate and benefit from his relationship with Nick, where maybe a bunch of young Groypers say, you know what, civic nationalism is based. I'm going to go be a Tucker conservative. But also realistically, I think he expects that if he maintains his relationship with Nick, there's going to be cross-pollination in the opposite direction as well. And I think that's pretty fucking bad.
No, hold on.
He has done that. Not only has he done that, he's done that specifically, just post Nick Fuentes interview, specifically with Dave Smith. And I want to quickly...
I have a host of objections there too, but that's okay. I'll shut up.
Well, I was going to say, like, I don't know, based on the way that exchange... Based on the way that exchange went, I think Tucker Carlson is for the sort of populist watcher, which you're not. I assume you'd openly accept that designation as not being a populist. The populist watcher who's going to watch that interaction between Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, I believe, now maybe I've just not in their heads, my belief is that they're going to think that Tucker Carlson came across as more convincing. They're going to think Tucker Carlson had more Christian justification for the things he was saying. And it almost seemed like Fuentes was waffling at certain parts where Tucker Carlson would make a point and Fuentes would repeatedly, like 3 times in a row, just say, I completely agree, and then try to like kind of navigate and try to nuance that agreement, right, with all the shit that
young
you said
people
before.
Are stupid, man.
You're what is that saying? Like, I shouldn't be denied a steak just because an infant can't stomach it. Like, I thought the interview was actually really interesting. I learned shit about Fuentes that I didn't know. And honestly, I learned some shit that was done to him that was actually kind of fucked up. Like, was it the ADL or some organization put a picture of his house up?
The ACLU put a picture of his house up.
ACLU? That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's fucking
I had no idea that happened to them. And that organization should be given a lot of shit for doing that. And I didn't even know about it. Nobody told me. Because I'm concerned that maybe the reason nobody told me is because there's people saying, well, irresponsible to talk about the bad things that happen in Nick Fuentes, because that would be sanitizing his personality. Because then that might make him look like a victim, and that might actually increase this kind of cult goal that he has later on down the road. But by doing this, we let other actors get away with bad things, whether you like Nick Fuentes or not. And I disagree with him strongly on most of the things that he said. Not all the things he said. Some of the things he said about feminism were pretty based. But most of the things that he said, I thought were really bad. I think that it's perfectly fine to have a non-contentious interview, and I also think it's perfectly fine to do that to get information about the bad shit that other people have done to him that they should be criticized for. The ACLU is crazy. Like they've gone downhill like for a while now. But now that I learned that, nobody here is even trying to defend it because it's undefensible.
I think it might have been the ADL, not the ACLU, but
okay, I said ADL first. I thought it was the ADL, but maybe
I thought it was the ACLU.
I don't remember.
Okay, but looking for
one of those organizations. Before you hate on them, look up which one it was first, and then you see to hate on that.
Both of those organizations, by the way, have slandered paleocons and neoconservatives. Hold on, everybody on the right
that was fucking crazy.
Have said to everybody on the right, called them racist, called them sexist, bigots, homophobes, xenophobes, everything under the fucking sun. It's not just these are your enemies as well. But sure, fine. I'll grant you that. I believe you.
Okay.
I believe him when he says that. However, the neoconservatives on this panel are not concerned about those people and the way in which they've treated just normal, everyday Americans. Nick Fuentes is. So what I'm going to pitch to you guys, because I can see you're not trying to moral frog or whatever. But I'm going to make a pitch to you guys for like an alternative approach you can take rather than fretting about the existence of isolationists in the Republican Party or on the right, because Nick is currently the biggest influence or the biggest right-leaning male influencer for people below 30 who are not a fan of neoconservatism. It's not just Iraq. It was like Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Syria. We're still active in Somalia, which I only just found out about, that we recently surpassed our record for airstrikes carried out in Somalia. I didn't know that we were in Somalia to begin with, much less that we were passing new records previously, which were set by the Trump administration in their first term. Without like panicking about all this stuff, what you guys could do is take a step back and say, Fuentes got the interview because he is offering something to Tucker Carlson, or they have a mutual understanding that they have something to potentially offer each other something. Ben Shapiro and the neoconservatives haven't been taking this tact for the past, while I've been alive, so nearly 30 years. It's not too late to change that tact and say, okay, listen, we don't want to give up all our soft power all over the globe. We do still really like Israel, and we do still like funneling them a bunch of money. However, things are pretty fucked up at home, so we can have a conversation about scaling back our world presence for concessions for the Republican Party, and not just panic anytime somebody mentions not going out and
you can understand why
wars.
Ben Shapiro might not want to do that with a guy who declared holy war on Jews, right? You can understand.
Well,
why.
okay.
I can. However, he also did that to William F. Buckley, to Ron Paul, to Tucker Carlson himself. So I don't really care what Ben Shapiro's moral fretting on the subject is. It's time to stop being a bad person.
Okay, but anyways, he obviously has his own geopolitical concerns. So PF Young, of all people, who I deeply enjoy, he said that he thinks that there's 4 things that he identified that he believes are motivating radicalism across the political spectrum. He said that he believes that it's wealth inequality, that it's rapid demographic change.
Who is this?
PF Young. Paul Young.
I know.
He's like the center streamer. Wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and the dissolution of the social fabric. Okay. And if you look at those 4 things, pick a topic that we talk about within the culture war, you could probably tie them back to one of these 4 things. But my frustration is that some of the most popular people on the internet, because, well, I'll just skip ahead, I suppose. The most popular people on the internet, in my opinion, they are doomsday prophets. They offer an apocalypse. They are a messiah or a prophet. and they effectively, in my opinion, preach like a false religion of doom. And because we're so wired to algorithms and we're so wired to existential crises and danger or whatever, these people become popular. So when you say like, oh, well, the neoconservatives need to offer, the neoconservatives and conservatives and the civic nationalists, they need to offer a more compelling narrative than Nick Fuentes to compete with Nick Fuentes, particularly with young people. I 100% agree. But my issue, because I have not been able to figure this out, is how do you communicate a better vision for the future without becoming a doomsday apocalyptic preacher or prophet yourself? And I do not know the answer to that question.
And just
Tucker Carlson does, just to be clear, but I didn't say vision. I just said, like, I'm specifically talking about
Even a narrative.
And just to clarify one point, because earlier I said, like, the key when you're thinking about a political coalition is knowing what your moral framework is and what's within it and what's without it, right? Like, America should be more isolationist. We should have a different foreign policy than we do. That's well within the sphere of conversation on the right. Like, I don't think that's a weird take. The reason that that the Stalin thing got me is not because Nick Fuentes is an isolationist. It's because it colors his comments about the Jews in a way that disquiets me morally, right? So, like, it's not about isolationism. I think there's room for a conversation about foreign policy on the right. To go back to the analogy that I've been having about this imaginary conversation with Lactoid. Put it about this way. If Lactoid and I were having a conversation, this is a law nerd point, so I don't know if the analogy is going to be that useful, but if Lactoid and I were having a conversation about originalism, and we're vibing, we're talking about originalism, it's going real good, and I'm like, yeah, man, my favorite originalist is Justice Scalia, and he's like, yeah, my favorite originalist is Justice Jackson. I'd be like, whoa, what the fuck? Because what just happened is his comment, not trying to compare her to Stalin or Hitler, but what his comment does is
obviously worse.
It makes me
gotcha, motherfucker! You laughed. You're a bad person.
It was funny. No, but it makes me reevaluate all the things he said about originalism earlier, because now I'm worried he's playing me. Because the thing he just said, and I know you wouldn't say that, Lactoid, is like it's incompatible with the kind of perspective he was giving earlier, which seemed more sane. So something is now amiss, right? That's my beef. I don't mind laughing at fucking edgy jokes. I don't mind having like contentious conversations. Like this shit's all well and good to me. But that struck me as like, oh wait, hold on. My moral sense is going off. The person I'm talking to might be somebody who isn't on my team, right? And like that's something you need to know, because that's what fucking happened to the left, right? They made all these fucking deals with the devil. They kept saying like, oh shit, it's pretty clear that this Hassan Piker guy is a fucking communist who hates America. And yet at no point did they firmly put their foot down and say it's too bad. And like now Hassan Piker's on fucking Vanity Fair and I'm getting him on mainstream TV. Like,
dude, it's worse.
It's worse than that. Jay Jones got elected.
Dude, fuck Jay Jones. Jay Jones fucking made an office joke. How about the fact that on Live and Learn,
that was not a joke.
The podcast.
It was not a joke, absolutely.
Well, I mean, if I put Hitler, Pol Pot, and
if you think that
read the whole conversation,
if you think that there's no undercurrent of anti-white racism within Black extremists in America, you're fucking insane.
I want to make a different point.
Let Counterpoints finish his point.
Yeah,
Counterpoints, go.
Yeah, it's so for me. Fuck Jay Jones. Okay, it's worse though. Okay. Live and Learn, the podcast that some of us are familiar with, that featured Josiah, IRI, Hutch, and Pisco, and Soy Pill, and maybe there's another lefty. It used to have like a socialist on it. The way that is pitched is that, oh, well, it's like two liberals and it's two progressives, and maybe one of them is socialisty, but not too socialisty or whatever, and they're just giving you the sane liberal takes of the day. They are ecstatic about Zoran Mandami's election. The liberals are. And of course, like, do I think that some of that is rooted in sticking the finger in the eye of Republicans? Yeah, I think that's like half of the emotion. But the fact that they're like, oh yeah, we elected a communist who, as recently as 2020 or 2021, was tweeting about defunding the police and, decolonize everything and fuck Columbus and all this bullshit. It's like, yeah, the libs. Imagine if I said that shit about like Nick Fuentes, where I was like, a candidate just like Nick Fuentes won in Kentucky. Haha, take that, libs. Like, yeah, dude, that'd be so fucked up. But the libs are totally ignorant to it.
Yeah, two things. Counterpoints. You just airbrushed and erased Econoboy. You Stalined him. Okay, you erased him.
I did say some.
He's a goddamn communist. Airbrush the fuck out of him.
But
nice guy.
That's what he gets for being socialist.
And I want to be very clear. Are we all suggesting that Jay Jones, Hassan, Mamdani are on the same level as Nick Fuentes?
No, I think Zoran Mamdani
objectively,
and Hassan Piker are the
Mamdani's
same.
worse.
Way fucking
Mamdani
worse.
is worse than Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think a communist in charge of our largest city is worse than a political streamer in his parents' basement in fucking Chicago.
No. He's asking about ideology though. So like you would have to extrapolate ideology.
No, I don't actually.
Hold on.
I actually don't at all.
Hold on, just real quick.
Yeah.
Ash, if you had to pick who gets to run New York City, Mamdani or Nick Fuentes, you'd pick Nick Fuentes?
I'd write in your mom. I don't fucking care. Mamdani's in charge of New York City. I'm not playing this stupid fucking game.
Well, okay,
I don't need to. I'm finally on with a bunch of other reasonable people. I'm not playing this other stupid fucking game.
Okay,
I don't want to.
But Ash, I'm going to extrapolate it and I'm going to answer it so you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, okay? I genuinely think that if... okay, so actually I'm going to say this to Wick then. So Zoran Mamdani, I think, wants a moneyless, stateless, classless society. I think he wants to decommodify basic human needs and have workers own the means of production. I think the only way that you can get that is through a state that is so large, it'll necessarily be authoritarian. And what you're going to do is, if he was to implement his world vision, we would effectively live in communist China or state capitalist China in its modern iteration. So we'd live in this like Orwellian deep state where you have to pretend that you're fucking happy, or the secret police check your phone, zip tie you, and throw you in the fucking river. That's what I think Zoran Mamdani would do if he could genie snap his ideology into existence. Now, with Nick Fuentes, I think what he would do is he would impose a Christian theocracy, probably try to get like a benevolent dictator like Tito or some shit in there. He would resegregate America. He would denaturalize Jewish people and deport them, and there would be horrific violence. So yes, I probably, between these two worldviews, I could tepidly agree that I think Nick Fuentes is an increment worse, but there are zero realities in which I willingly choose Zoran Mamdani to run my society.
I didn't vote for him either, man. Like he wasn't my first choice. Okay,
but not my first. There are liberals who are excited about him being in power because it gives a middle finger to the right wing.
Okay,
that's different.
Again, I think that's a mistake. But I just want to keep us like grounded a little bit in what Fuentes. I think that Fuentes would not care about the laws or the rules that would try to govern him in a way that Mamdani will.
Let me give you a tough question. Really tough question.
We don't even need to address that. I don't.
I want a question.
Go ahead.
So for some reason, Satan wakes up and decides it's going to be a fun day on Earth, and boom, Fuentes versus Hassan Piker. Which one are you voting for? You have to vote for one. Satan has dictated
Hassan
it.
Hassan Piker is better than Nick Fuentes. Yes.
Yeah. See, to me, they're like sides of the same, or they're different sides of the same coin. I suppose that they both suck ass.
Both are bad, but one is significantly worse.
Okay, but
Wick is never going to admit that because he subscribes to a fundamentally pre-liberal racial ideology in which anybody who is racist
before I vote for Hassan Piker. I just want to be clear to you. I'd vote for Trump before I'd vote for Hassan Piker.
I think I'll take that.
I think just to clarify the conversation, like for most people on the right, if you ask them like which is worse, Nazism or communism, they're going to say that's a hot tie. Like there's like, these are both moral evil and one's not worse than the other. They're the same level of evil.
But I feel like that's shifting.
So the thing that like I think makes these conversations interesting is that the left has casually embraced communism, which does make it kind of hard when there's like a real world example and it looks like, oh, this flirtation with communism seems like it's not a joke anymore. It actually is influencing lefty politics because, like, for most people on the right, the moral intuition is that communism is just as bad as Nazism. Like it's not like one's worse or better.
This is pertinent to the conversation, though. This is pertinent to the conversation. I feel like Hassan Piker and to some degree our old friend, come on, help me out. Fucking who was the social Econoboy? Thank you. I kept saying Isak done left.
We gotta remember Econoboy. Econoboy's memory.
No, I Stalined him.
In our lives.
He's gone. He's erased. He's photoshopped out. So
watch me debate him where I told him socialism was evil on my channel. That was fun.
So to some point, I think that characters like that, who say, "Oh, we can do the we can start with Scandinavian social democracy. We can start there." But realistically, the goal is to have like this technocratic utopia where we do instantiate socialism and communism. And the fact that those people are making inroads with young left people under the age of 30, that freaks me the fuck out. The other thing that freaks me the fuck out, though, which I think that the right is kind of blind to, is that Nick Fuentes is doing the same thing on the right. And Trump has created fertile ground on which characters like Fuentes can throw their seeds. And that's what I'm frustrated with, where I feel like I feel like the right wing is blind to the fact that people under the age of 30 may be more receptive to fascism, more receptive to authoritarianism, more receptive to illiberalism or post-constitutionalism. They might be more receptive to those ideas than you want to give credit for. And Trump paved the way for that.
I'd love to respond to that. I just love to respond to that. Again, no, the neoconservatives did, because they operated a fascist state. They did not decrease taxes. They did, yeah. If you could roll your eyes at it, because it's cringe to call anybody fascist. Okay,
no,
if we're going back, it's everybody since Calvin Coolidge.
No, I have a pretty sophisticated understanding of fascism. So can you please tell me how
everybody does, because it clears their own actions, and everything that falls under their own actions falls below. Advanced militarism that depleted our country's economy, stole 2 generations worth of wealth, decimated millions of lives across the globe, completely destroyed American manufacturing, gave it away to a foreign hostile nation while taxing the fuck out of us. Swedish tax for Eritrean levels of service is what I've grown up under. I grew up under you, not under Trump. And Trump is not doing a good job either, to be clear, but it's not. Again, this claim that like this is a new problem, it never existed, everything was fine before Trump got here. I'm sorry, you have to engage. You have to engage with the problems people are having. It's not about lies.
I don't subscribe to that.
Tell me how much you're going to pay me to vote for you. It's very easy.
Yeah. So I don't subscribe to the historical narrative. And by the way, just to make it simple, like my definition of fascism, which is just correct, is political corporatism, treating the nation state like a unitary body, and flexible authoritarianism, meaning you do whatever is necessary in order to seize power, and you do whatever is necessary in order to maintain power. That's how I define fascism. That should be coming straight from like Gentile. Now, when it comes to
FDR, but nobody else. That's totally fine. I agree with that.
Okay. Now, when it comes to what you said historically descriptively, which, by the way, I agree with descriptively, part of the reason why I wish I could rally around the ghost of Ronald Reagan. I wish I could. I wish I could say, we just need to cut taxes and be pro-America and be pro-military. But I think that Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton set up the world in which we presently exist, in which effectively like trickle down economics, slashed social services, dysfunctional dissolution of the social safety net, and then like a K economy where the rich are getting richer and the working class feels increasingly incapable of living a decent life, and the middle class that does have a decent life is getting smaller and smaller by the day. This is a dysfunctional system. But the problem is I'm now trapped between effectively 2 tribes within the right wing. There's the neoliberal neoconservatives, the laissez-faire economists who just want to cut all social services and also reduce taxes, but they also want a strong military. Or I'm trapped with isolationist, authoritarian, fascistic freaks. And those are the two options. And the fascistic freaks might have the economics right, where they're saying like, hey, the working class and the middle class is suffering. We need to take care of them. Their policies are dog shit, but they at least understand the problem. But the neoliberals and the neoconservatives are correct that we live in a constitutional republic and we have to be incremental and technocratic in the way that we execute governance. But these tribes are separate and they fucking hate each other. They don't understand each other and they can't work together. So it's just totally dysfunctional.
Yes,
Okay,
they can.
I need to make a little money today, so I got to read some of these super chats. Thank you, dear viewers. Continue to give me
Let me
money.
type out my phone.
$5 from Ananasi, or Anansi, to say, if the right can cozy up to the extreme far right, why did we spend a decade complaining about the left and SJW's woke far left? 2 months membership from Schwengo. Based Connor, thank you for having a spine. $5 from Schwengo. Ash is such a dipshit. He's like the used toilet paper of Curtis Yarvin, but somehow even dumber. Lord of the Nerds for $5.
I have way nicer hair than Curtis Yarvin. Come on.
$5 from Lord of the Nerds to say Tucker pushed back harder against Fuentes than Connor has against Destiny boning his mom. What would Burke say to Destiny boning his mom?
It was a joke. Steven didn't have sex with my mother. I hope that changes things for you.
Connor, that's the greatest super chat of all time. Can
I
had
we
some
get
better
that
ones, so
frame?
that's okay.
5 gift memberships from AK Batozai. Thank you for the gift memberships. I really appreciate you, sir. $5 from Moto Freak to say Connor is the only good conservative on this panel. The rest of them are disgusting anti-American ghouls, especially Ryan.
Damn, Ryan. What the fuck, Ryan? I didn't see that coming at all.
His license should be revoked.
I feel like they've been on their best behavior tonight. I haven't even heard
What the
anything that
fuck?
egregious.
Look,
Ryan's been agreeing with Connor. How is Connor the good one and Ryan's the worst one? That makes
I've been trying to
that
explain-
makes no sense.
I've been trying to explain this to Wick. There is something about the way I articulate my ideas that makes the left fucking insane. I get some crazy blowback.
$5
Calmly,
from
complete sentences, normal
Yep.
understanding of
Sure,
English
sure.
vocabulary.
$5 from Cameraman 502 to say Ash's description of the neocons is so ass backward. It makes it clear he never grew up because his head is in the sand like an ostrich. Thank you for the $5.
Can I address that?
No, they're okay.
No. Very, very, very briefly, because this goes in line with what was just said. The neocons fuck shit up, like especially geopolitically and especially on the budget, fuck shit up in a way that Trump could maybe dream of fucking shit up. Like, this is
I don't
why I've
even think that's
consistently said
true.
that George W. Bush is one of the worst presidents of all time. The worst president of all time. I think George W. Bush is much worse than Donald Trump. I think George W. Bush is much, much worse than Joe Biden. Now, there are specific policies, perhaps, that you can point to George W. Bush, where I'm going to agree with. But, like, let's not pretend the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, one of the two biggest geopolitical blunders we've had this century, and for a large part of the last century, too, I'm going to say, that was under George W. Bush. And that was continued by presidents since then, but that was him. He began that idea. And that was the neocon idea. And I think a lot of people, Tucker especially, right, and Nick Fuentes to some extent as well, but I think this is Tucker's, like, kind of what he's known for, and this is his bread and butter, is pushing against these absolute fucking blunders. These, I want to use TOS words, these things that have cost us more money than Obama, like, couldn't fucking fuck shit up this bad.
I don't
Like,
even
A
think this is
foolish
true.
commitment to death
Yeah,
on an
yeah.
international scale,
Yeah.
a genocidal scale that
Yeah.
completely destroyed our economy and once again put us
Awful.
into 2 generations worth
Trillions.
debt.
Trillions and
I don't even
trillions of
think you-
dollars.
Hold on.
And hold on, let me
But you guys are wrong. So
I'm not even asking you to
talk
pay
about
that back, by the way. I'm just asking you, hey, if you could come to me
No,
and
I want to just finish it.
act as if you
sitting
were
this for a
willing
little
to
bit.
maybe
Hold on,
just
hold on,
stop
let-
increasing it,
Let
that would be
Lactoid
fine.
finish his-
Yeah, I've been-
Lactoid
I've
he had
Sorry,
his
that's my
rant,
bad.
his greed.
I ran. It was just storing the whole conversation you guys were having. It was just like building up, and then that super chat set it off. And so then when this happens, and then in the modern context, And I know that some people are here are going to disagree or whatever. But in the modern context, when we give $200 billion, just under $200 billion to Ukraine, which is roughly the amount that we gave the Soviet Union in the Lend-Lease Act against Nazi Germany, just to kind of accounting for inflation, just to give an idea of the scale here. I mean, how many decades could you afford all these food stamps that people are claiming are necessary off of this amount of money? When we give that much, and Tucker Carlson is like one of the main opponents for that, and he's getting lambasted for it. To me, like Tucker Carlson opposing that makes him more credible than all these neocons and neolibs that you guys are trying to refer to as like the sane right, or even the sane center, or the sane left. Tucker Carlson has more stock to me because he's not, because he's able to at least look back at the last 20 years and say, oh, wow, let's not do that again.
Okay, so I got to respond to you guys because I feel like there's things that are just factually incorrect, okay? So the war on terror cost $8 trillion, okay? That's Afghanistan and that's Iraq, okay? Donald Trump, in his first term, ran up $8 trillion worth of debt. Now, if you want to say inflation, oh, it was only 5, it was only 6, okay? That debt is because of one of the greatest economic catastrophes in history, right? It was the second worst economic catastrophe, or worst economic catastrophe since the Great Depression. But at the same time, the war on terror did not cost as much as you think it cost. And then not just that, what we're talking about in reference to American debt and what we're talking about in reference to American commercial empire, you might not want to hear this, but America has bilateral and multilateral relationships with 70% of the economies on planet Earth. Out of $100 trillion global economy, America is responsible for the security of roughly $70 trillion worth of international trade. These are the things that you guys consume. They're agricultural products, it's petroleum, it's energy, it's plastic, it's microchips, it's all that bullshit. And so we are the beneficiaries of this. Now, you can say, hey, we're running way too hard of debt. The way the federal government runs, it's way too fucking hot. We're way too military adventuristic, like invading a country in Eurasia and occupying it is literally one of the most expensive things that you can do. And I agree with you. But there are ways to secure international trade and wealth without spending the war on terror budget, while not, I don't know, accidentally killing 3 million people through incompetence. Can I respond
to that?
I don't want to make this a foreign policy debate.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, I'll bring it back to the comparison.
We are talking about like Fuentes and Carlson versus neocons.
No, I understand. You're making but here's the thing. You're making the broader point as to, well, there are situations, we have alignment and agreements, and we do this, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fine. That was happening before George Bush. And there's a huge difference here between wasting $8 trillion on a war that's accomplished nothing besides handing Iraq over to Iran and handing Afghanistan, or I guess doing nothing in Afghanistan because it was the Taliban and now it's the Taliban. As opposed to, I mean, I'm sorry, I hate welfare. I think that like $100 is probably better spent on food stamps than it is blowing shit up in the Middle East that accomplishes nothing besides actually opposing U.S. geopolitical interests. And this is what the neocons have given us in large part since 2000. And when Tucker Carlson goes on this interview, like you before a little bit ago, Connor, you were talking about how he's an isolationist. He does all these, all this bad stuff, and like this is part of the reason why we shouldn't give him charity. But when Tucker Carlson is there talking about how maybe we shouldn't be giving so much money around the world or getting involved in these pointless wars or funding Israel. I mean, there is a real point here. Why the fuck are we giving Israel so much money over so many years when they have universal health care and they're able to, afford this first world society? Why are we giving them shit? Why is that shit in grants? Why is it not in loans? What's up with that? Why do you get lambasted when you criticize this by conservative commentators such as Ben Shapiro, which is one of the people that we heard talking about today? And that was a large part of the conversation that was had in that interview. I don't know what's irresponsible about that. Like that particular part, which was most of it, was correct. The part that where Nick Fuentes was saying some crazy shit, Tucker Carlson pushed back, and I think pushed back effectively.
I would answer you, but the other guys are waiting, so I'll take notes.
Yeah, we're gonna go to Mullally, then Ash, then we're gonna counterpoints. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into an economy or debt debate, but the scale of our entitlement programs is so different than the scale of our military expenditures. It's like 47% of our budget, for almost 50 at this point. I mean, the cost of SNAP in 2024 was 100 billion. So it's not years and years that equates Ukraine. It's 2 years that equates all the aid to Ukraine. Like, these are very, very expensive programs. We spend most of our money on entitlement programs, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The thing that I think Connor and I probably, if I was going to point to like our biggest disagreement, is that I actually do think we have enough bad government that's been instituted over time that a wave of populism is justified. Like, there are stuff that needs to be bulldozed. The question with a bulldozer, though, is who gets to steer it. And that's really important, because when you're bulldozing, you're going to knock down some stuff that needs to be knocked down, but there's always a risk that you're going to knock down something that's really important, that you really value, that you shouldn't knock down. And in a conversation with Fuentes, like, what the thing I was listening for, like, because I don't know much about him going into it, I'm like, is this somebody whose input can be trusted when we're steering the bulldozer? And the Stalin comment was important to me because the answer became no, right? And I think that's the question we should be asking ourselves. It's not, because what the left did that I think was the error that's cost them fucking everything, is they let the commies and the fringe left start steering the ship. We have to know where the line is and say, like, we're not really looking for your input if you go past this line. And I think that's actually critical. And if the right doesn't figure that out, they're going to be in the exact same position the left is in now in 5 or 10 years, where they have a fringe that's just cannibalized the heart of the party, and nobody can tell the difference between a fucking commie and, sorry, Wick, like a center-left Democrat anymore, because the lines have become so fucking blurred over time.
Yeah, just 2 things before I let Ash go.
No worries.
I do think it might be useful to the audience and to the conversation, perhaps. As a liberal, as someone who is a Democrat here, I think the only Democrat here, listening to this, I am of 2 minds. Part of me is rejoicing. They want to work with Nick Fuentes. They're going to lose every fucking election from here till Kingdom Come. That's amazing. Our chances of winning are like 99%. But the other half of me is horrified, because yes, our chances of winning has gone up tremendously. But if we lose, if we get that 1% of loss and Nick Fuentes gets into power, you will see, like, Mamdani. New York City will survive Mamdani. New York City's had socialist mayors before, right? New York City hasn't flattened, right? It hasn't turned into a hellscape. Well, yeah, any more than New York City already is, okay? But we've survived that. Fuentes is something different, and I don't think we will. So that's where I'm at mentally here, watching you guys. It's like shock and awe. Like, shock. Oh my God, they're giving us the ball. And awe, like, they are just. You're playing.
Very
with
strange endorsement of Nicolas Fuentes,
Ash,
frankly. I'm
please.
not sure if I could approve of something like that. But listen, I'll just grant you guys that the Stalin comment, not good. Not the paleo,
I don't think anybody
comment, like
defended
the
it.
Nazi wing. Yeah, not the Nazi wing or whatever. Like, hey, it's not good. Okay, I'll just grant you all that. I disagree with the numbers on Iraq and Afghanistan, our military adventurism. I think that's about $10 trillion too low, but I'll grant you that. I think the characterization of our welfare, social safety nets have been destroyed and our taxes have been slashed. I disagree. I think that some of those, because just looking at the numbers, but again, I'll just grant you that. So that means that we're on the precipice, apparently, of another Holocaust, unless somebody figures out how to address the problems of normal Republican people, whatever they may be. Maybe it's just a problem of perception. And if that's the case, then my suggestion is all you have to do is come in good faith and start presenting, not fretting about who gets to be allowed or whatnot, because right now the standard is that the other tribe is people who offer us something or approach us with the potential for trade are allowed in. That's some of the left, that's some of the extreme right. I don't know where those people are going to go after Donald Trump. I think 2026 is probably going to. I think all the Gen Z people who voted for Trump in 2024 are going to bend this administration over the counter come 2026 as revenge, and good for them. But somebody better start thinking of, I don't know, just ways to approach a dialogue with these people that does not involve calling them anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And you think of something you might be able to offer us.
Yeah, no, I think that rolls right into.
Sorry, Connor, before you go,
sure.
With who? Like, I don't think Tucker
the disgruntled masses
anti-Semitic, but like if you're talking about like Fuentes' supporters, like
yeah, sure, Fuentes supporters are. But listen, people like Tucker, people who are libertarians, paleocons, we've been enduring the anti-Semitism allegations for the past 30 years.
Oh yeah. But
that might be a good start. We promise not to call you that anymore.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is if someone came to you and they're like, you know who's to blame? The Jews, and they went from there. At what point would you be comfortable with an anti-Semitic label if what they're doing is just expressing anti-Semitism? Like at a certain point,
immediately.
Okay, so like that's certainly how I read Fuentes in that conversation. Like that's how he came across. I don't maybe you know him better than I do, but that's certainly how he came across to me. I don't know if he came across that way to you.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with calling Nick Fuentes anti-Semitic. I'm concerned with calling Tucker Carlson anti-Semitic. I'm concerned with calling Ron Paul anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
I'm concerned with calling you anti-Semitic.
Yeah, no,
that's what I'm worried about.
We're on the same page. I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure you weren't extending that to like Fuentes and the Groypers, which I thought.
No, I do think that Nazism is anti-Semitic. Some people may have an issue.
Yeah, I want to make sure we were on the page for that basic.
Okay.
So I was taking notes as Lactoid and Ash were kind of running through like the failures of neoconservatism and all that kind of stuff, and I had a series of like geopolitical explanations, but then I realized that that's probably not going to be compelling, just giving you like historical counterfactuals to your narrative, because that's not really what you're asking me to do.
Actually.
Well, or we could have that conversation another night. What you're really saying is, we are operating as Americans in a system where we're pouring water into a bucket and water is dripping out the bottom. And you are basically saying like, we need the bucket, we need the bucket, we need the bucket. But people are so desperate that they're like, fuck the bucket, throw it away. You know, let's figure out something new. Let's figure out a better way than using a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And so in that desperation,
give me my bucket back.
What's that?
Give me my bucket back. Would be my characterization, but sure.
So I guess that the interesting thing about this conversation, in my opinion, is we could have a totally different conversation where we're coming up with like technocratic propositions in order to deal with what we're talking about. Which, like I said, P.F. Young identified wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and dissolution of social fabric. Here's the problem, though, which is I think a deep problem with politics is all four of us are above average, probably underemployed, relatively sane people making a decent living. Even if we came up with the perfect technocratic solutions, we are not the doomsday prophets who are in sway of broad culture, nor are we elected representatives with a mandate to fix American society. And right now, it seems like there's more money to be made and more political capital to be gained by dividing up between let's call them the new right and the neocons. There's more money and time and attention and profit to be made by continuing this division, also profiting from the binary division between left and right. So even if we came up with perfect solutions, we'd still be fucked. And I think that's part of the problem.
This was, I think,
that's gay. That sucks so bad. Come on, Connor. What the fuck is the matter with you?
Dude, I'll go on a technocratic rant for the next hour if you want.
No,
I love talking about
that's what you should. That's what you should do. Honestly, I'm not tolerating this idea that like it's all over. Only people only want to listen to doom and gloom. Zoran Mamdani got elected not on, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of extremist rhetoric out there, but a big part of his appeal, I think, is the fact that he's not talking about foreign policy. Cuomo and Sliwa are fielding issues about like which foreign country. Hey, do you want to go to Israel?
Yeah, but how
You
many
wanna
of
go
his
to Israel?
affordability?
Hey, I
how
can
many
talk
of
to
his
Jews at
affordability
home, by the
policies
way.
do you think he's actually going to be able to implement, though?
Okay, I have
If
some super chats.
he-
I got to make the
If
money.
he just briefly, if he runs,
Ash.
oh, I was going to say something extremist. Come on.
Let me make my money, okay?
Okay.
$2 from Kickna Stanza to say Lactoid will condemn Trump's military actions. Yeah. Don't
Yeah, you should look at my Twitter. Literally the day of the strike in Iran, I criticized it. So
$20 from anonymous caller to say 99% Wick. Our ability as a fellow Democrat to lose in unlosable elections is unparalleled. Fair point. It might be a little lower than I would expect. Malik
Jay
for
Jones
$5
won.
to say when the left embraces Hassan and Luigi, the right embraces Fuentes. You have to keep your extremists in check. Thank you for $5. $10.
No, we could embrace Luigi too.
I know the right.
Oh, that's a spicy meatball.
Yeah, $10 from Doobie to say I was way behind in the convo, but had to fast forward after Connor's complaint that Zoran criticized Columbus. Why the fuck shouldn't we say fuck Columbus? The dude was a brutal rapist.
It's anti-Italian discrimination, but yeah.
I also watched The Sopranos.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on.
Fuck Columbus.
Come on,
He's a
son.
bad guy.
New
I'm
Jersey
just
originally.
saying.
Very effective.
$10 from Doobie to say if you're so attached to the American narrative you can't handle Zoran saying fuck Columbus, you're honestly not much better than Nick Fuentes. Thank you. For
that's cute.
Thank you for endorsing Nick Fuentes. Because guess what?
cute.
I am attached to the American narrative. For the first time in like 10 years, and don't get me wrong, I've gone pretty deep into some alt-right pipelines. I got reverse pipeline. I went from alt-right to libertarian, anarchist, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I got stuck in the same honeypot, one of the same honeypots that Lawrence Southern did back in 2015. That was fun. But when Tucker Carlson made the pitch that blood guilt, blood libel is, or sorry, not blood libel, blood guilt, genetic guilt is anti-Christian, anti-American, is totally unacceptable, I felt some red, white, and blue welling up in me that I hadn't felt since I was a little kid at 4th of July parades.
Well, no, this is, I think,
welling up is going the other way.
Yeah,
that one goes down.
Like needing a narrative, because you're right. Politics has proven over and over again that having a brilliant technocratic plan does not win a national election. It just doesn't. What wins is a good story, a good narrative. And this was, I think, Jordan Peterson's best point of all the points he ever made, was that the conservative right needs to come up with a better narrative. And if they don't, it will be supplied by someone else. And the danger with the doomsday prophets is that they supply a narrative and that becomes the narrative. Sorry. And the reason, shout out the debate I did on Monday. The reason I talk about natural rights so much, and I'm trying to rub it in Pisco's face how important natural rights are, is that is our American heritage. That's the philosophical ground floor. That's who we are as a country. And I think there is a story to tell there. And we should be telling that story, because the right is the natural torchbearer for that story right now. And we actually do need to be proud of who we are. We need to be proud of our philosophic and intellectual heritage, and we need to carry that forward. And that does actually require talking about this shit and hyping it up. So I'm with you. Let's go red, white, and blue. Let's talk about how Christian sensibilities destroyed blood guilt. Let's talk about the fact
Tucker
that
Carlson
Americans
did this
on this foundation.
Tucker Carlson did this, and he was slandered as being anti-Semitic. That's the problem.
I want to address that
it's no
too.
longer enough to talk about. It's no longer enough to talk about narratives. I'm sorry. You have to come to the table. You have to come to the adults table and say, "This is the money I'm going to give you."
Okay.
We're going to get rid of H-1Bs. We're going to get rid of foreign influence. We're going to just take a step back. Slightly fewer circumcisions in Zambia, or a free hotel room if you travel to Zambia. That would be fine. You have to start giving me shit in return. Every single policy. Every single narrative needs to have a price tag attached at this point.
But
and then I can trust you again.
Okay. But okay, I agree with you that people want something real. They want something tangible. They want something that can be measured, some kind of measurable improvement to their lives. And I do think Donald Trump kind of tapped into that, which is basically like, vote for me, things will be good, bad things will stop. That was basically like his whole campaign speech. So we could actually just like ape that. Now, my beef with that, though, is that Donald Trump aped that narrative, which is effectively vote for me, good things happen, bad things stop. There's the rhetoric. Boom. Now, the thing, though, is that our problems are super complex. So, Ash, you said, Connor, don't be a pussy. Don't back away from the fact that technocratic conversations are hard. Okay. You know what I think that we actually need? I think we need real investment in American infrastructure that actually makes traveling between cities relatively cheap and affordable for Americans. But not just that, we need brand new fucking cities. Like, we need to start from scratch as far as urban design goes. Like,
no, we need an 11th lane.
What's that?
We need an 11th lane.
No, I don't want an 11th lane. Like, I genuinely I think that
new rail line.
Part of the affordability crisis.
That's cool and all, but I can't pay for my rent. I'm not worried about.
Let
I can't pay for my rent. I'm not worried about a high speed. I think a high speed rail line between Dallas and Houston would be cool.
No, it's okay.
I can't pay my rent.
No. This is actually
think of something else.
No. Ash is correct here. He's fundamentally correct. Because basically, like, I could appeal to this like highfalutin multi-billion-dollar idea, but if you have an immediate it's just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's physical security, social ego, whatever. I'm talking about shit at like the higher tiers, and he's like, bro, I can't even fucking afford the shit I have right now. You want me to pay taxes for a multi-billion-dollar super project? That's a perfectly reasonable objection, especially for the working class. That's shitloads of people in the working class are saying that. So yeah, but then that's what's weird to me, though, about the populist right, because typically when you're talking about affordability, when you're talking about rent, when you're talking about accessible and cheap food, when you're talking about welfare benefits, that is typically the concern of the left. And that's one of the reasons where I feel like we've been out of whack, because the populist right is talking about effectively what used to be democratic and left-wing concerns. So I'm all turned about politically.
Well, here's the thing. It's not just welfare is the thing, because we already have welfare for basically subsidizing the other half of the country. It's my half of the country that often doesn't get it, or two, gets pushed out of it very, very slightly. Like I went home.
Are we talking about white class? What are we talking about?
I went homeless in 2022. I'm climbing my way back up. I got an apartment. I got a more expensive apartment. I started working 2 jobs. Like I'm climbing back up after fleeing halfway across the country with nothing but a suitcase. Okay. Like I'm still down for the American project. I'm just letting you know, like, hey, these high tier American problems, I think you really do need to focus on some individual, not systemic, like direct symptoms, letting the American people know that, like, no. The advantage of treating symptoms directly is that you're telling people, yes, the problem in front of your face, I'm going to fix it, and you know that if I don't fix it immediately, or if at least I don't smooth it over, then I'm lying to you. We have to go back to these baseline reforging social trust.
But you have
how do you do this from a right-wing perspective?
Progressive. Like the thing is, if the solution to poverty is more welfare, you're not on the right.
It's not.
No, that's what I mean.
Wait. So what's a right-wing solution to poverty? I'm really curious.
You have to have both the bulldozer that deregulates, slashes taxes, gets the economy different, lets people have space to innovate. But then you have to have conservatives who are willing to build something new. Like, you want to fix education? Great, bulldoze it. But then you've got to build conservative schools. You want to fix welfare? Great, bulldoze it, deregulate. But then you've got to have conservative projects where they're charitably giving and they're building local voluntary
The party is not interested in any of that shit. They're just interested in smashing it and then letting poor people live in the fucking rubble.
So Connor, that is the point I'm making about steering the bulldozer. Like, when you have these conversations, you need to know that there are people who just want to knock shit down. And
can I have a second, please?
If smashing it was creating the largest, I have to. Come on.
Go ahead, but I want to go immediately after.
Talk so much. We got to give it to Counterpoints. Okay. Go ahead.
So I, as you guys know, in 24, I hated Trump so much that I worked with the Democrats during the general election, okay? And in
Progressives, not just the Democrats.
Okay. Well, let's be real, half of them were fucking liberals. But anyways, the point is, in a lot of
Race
meetings,
communists.
in a
I'm not
lot of meetings, I was saying that if you are not talking about the guy who is making $10 an hour at Dollar General as a Democrat, you're not talking about shit. And what I mean by that is that if the guy who is working class, who is stereotypically the person that was the representative of the Democratic Party, who feels politically disenfranchised, can't afford his life, can't afford a family, can't afford his apartment, can't afford his food, if you are not taking policy or rhetoric that is like catered to his needs, then you're fucking up. Now, when it comes to the right wing, part of the reason why I'm partially happy to hear you talking about these things, but the reason why I brought up that the right wing typically doesn't have a solution to these things is because the right wing kind of believes in a dog-eat-dog, meritocratic, Darwinian economic landscape where if you remain poor, it's a fucking skill issue. Whereas if you're a smart person, then you can typically find an education, climb into at least the working class, if not the middle class, if not the upper middle class. And if your economic and social life is not the way that you want it, then it's incumbent upon you to figure it out. Now, I don't think that's a great technocratic solution, but you're effectively saying what I said to Democrats. So I'm actually really curious how you would attack these problems from a right-wing lens.
Yeah, so the right wing did not smash these things. They built them up. They did more social spending in their years than Democrats did. Even in peacetime, they did more social spending.
What are we talking about here?
What are we talking about historically? If creating the largest welfare state in the history of mankind is smashing welfare, then and dog-eat-dog capitalism, I hate to see what building it.
Wait, hold on. We're talking about Reagan deregulating a shitload of things, and we're talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt building the modern welfare state. What history are you referring to?
Sorry. Historically, Republicans have increased social spending.
I mean, year over year, what are we talking about?
Within the last 20 years, has it been insignificant, or am I just, if I'm totally wrong?
Hold on. These programs,
I think Biden did more.
My understanding, which Ryan alluded to earlier, is the fact that we have entitlement systems that are already on the books that are so expensive that we barely know what to do. And what I mean by that is if you look at the federal budget, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, that's 2/3 of the federal budget. That's $4 trillion. If we did not have a military, if we did no international aid, if we had no discretionary spending, we would still be at $0 of tax revenue because we would have taxed $4 trillion and we would have spent $4 trillion just on entitlements. But just because the number has gone up during Republican administrations does not mean that the Republicans have added social entitlement programs. What's happened, as far as I understand, is that it's a generational thing where the boomers are such a large demographic and Gen X and millennials are so comparatively small that the costs of these programs have risen dramatically because boomers keep living. Goddamn boomers. Right. Whereas the next generations who are paying the taxes are not as big. That's the problem.
Right. The programs are per capita, and as the people eligible for those swell up, then the spending goes up.
Which is, by the way, why we were using immigration as an economic stopgap.
Connor,
you guys fucked that up, didn't you?
Okay,
not me. I'm not in charge.
Hold on.
Yeah. I'm 37, not 60.
I want to ask a question too afterwards.
Okay, Ryan,
can I jump in though? I had a question.
Let's get Ryan Lactoid.
Connor,
you guys first. Yeah,
it's two things. It's exactly what you said. Some of these programs have just become more and more inefficient over time. Like Social Security was based in this idea that you don't need to capture any value for your time or investment, which is by modern standards, an insane way to run any financial system. But that's what we're stuck with. So there's this kind of legacy issue. The other problem is, and it's not quite what Ash said, but it's in that wheelhouse. When Republicans are elected, they don't actually roll any of this shit back. They don't necessarily do new things, but they don't actually bulldoze it. So to the extent that the populist right looks like a bulldozer, they have correctly diagnosed that Republicans say, if you elect us, we'll stop this, but they just hit pause and then they lose power, and the next administration expands it. So if you look over the arc of history, it just keeps expanding. And I do think there's an appetite for a bulldozer right now. So that, and I think they're correct to want a bulldozer. The question is, what are you aiming at? And that's the fight that's going to be on the right that's interesting.
Okay, but sorry, I know Lactoid wants to go, but Doge, as an example, was supposed to be the bulldozer. I think Elon Musk said we were going to cut $2 trillion. Everybody laughed at him. Doge ultimately recommended $150 billion. Congress ultimately only cut $10 billion. And I don't even want to discuss the things that they cut because it's so fucking stupid. It drives me crazy. But that's representative of 0.16% of the federal budget. It did not systemically change a fucking thing.
You know what? You know why Doge failed? Like, honestly?
Because
Doge
most people don't want to stop spending money.
It's not possible to cut $2 trillion from the discretionary budget. There was no hope that they were ever going to do that.
For sure. But even $150 billion, you could have said they at least tried.
But the reason Doge failed,
they did. Hold on. Did they do it for lack of trying, or
the reason Doge failed? No, it's actually really specific.
I do want to get back to the Fuentes thing because we don't have too much time left.
Okay.
I know.
Then I'll be pretty quick. Ramaswamy had this plan where he said Chevron, which was the case that let agencies just overexpand and overregulate endlessly for generations, Chevron got overturned. Ramaswamy's plan was have every federal agency review every regulation on their books and say that in light of Chevron being gone, these regulations are unconstitutional. Massively deregulate the economy, and it'd be very hard for the next administration to build it back up because there's no Chevron deference. Now, this plan, if enacted, would have had not the direct financial cuts, Connor, because those were never on the table, realistically, but it would have been the massive bulldozer people were looking for. But Ramaswamy got kicked out of the coalition. Why? Because the woke right got after him. And that's my
calling
problem,
Americans
right?
stupid and lazy on Christmas.
The bulldozer was right there. It was aimed at exactly the fucking thing it needed to be aimed at, and then it got kicked out and sabotaged by the people who want the bulldozer. And that's what pisses me off about it, is that we were actually this close to Doge doing something fucking useful.
To bring it back, Fuentes at least had a hand in that. You understand that, right? A hand in taking away power from Ramaswamy, and because according to them and Fuentes and the Groypers, he's not American, even though he is.
And they got upset that he insulted indigenous workers.
Yeah, calling Americans stupid and lazy on Christmas. Like, hey, if your argument is that our colleges are completely useless, then go ahead, burn them to the ground and eliminate student debt. However, we have 100,000 unemployed computer science graduates. Now, if these institutions are valuable and to be maintained, then that means that some of these people, at least, maybe we could be charitable and say only half, are qualified to work in tech. So we could eliminate half of the present H-1Bs, but that wasn't on Vivek Ramaswamy's plan. And again, I do think that he would have been effective if he implemented that plan. I think anybody can implement that plan, so I don't know why it wasn't. It's pretty embarrassing. I just chalk that up to the general Trump incompetence. But
I want to give it to Lactoid.
But go ahead.
Lactoid has been trying to get in.
So I oppose canceling Ramaswamy. I think this is very consistent of me. I opposed it at the time, and I would oppose canceling Tucker Carlson for having an interview with Nick Fuentes. Like this sort of back and forth. Oh, well, I'm going to destroy you. No, I'm going to destroy. No, it's fucked up. I think that's really the thing that I came here to really argue against. To say no, rational conversations are important. About the conversation about poor people. I've made it clear. Maybe I just care a lot less than you guys do. I'm not going to try to lie and say yeah, we should give more social spending to poor people. No, we should cut a bunch of it. A lot of it's bullshit. Yeah. Question, I guess, for and this might make it a little bit contentious. So I guess Wick and Connor. Connor less so because I think you already said that you would work with Nick Fuentes and the dog, to save the dogs or whatever. But I mean, Wick, you seemed very, I guess, kind of befuddled when we said, hey, if there was a very narrow goal that we might work with Nick Fuentes on, then we might consider doing that. But Connor also brought up Progressive Victory, in which you guys both, I understand, worked with progressives, including Vosh, who is a straight up communist, right, who supports horrific policies. in order to accomplish a narrow goal, which was getting Kamala, or originally Biden, but then Kamala elected. So, I mean, is there not some level of hypocrisy there? Like, if you're going to work with horrific, evil people like Bosch, that you would think it's crazy that we might work with Fuentes.
If you think that I was in charge of who Progressive Victory worked with, you would be very, very wrong.
You were in charge of who you worked with. Come on.
I understand, but there's a difference between me choosing to work with someone and me working with someone who that person chooses to work with someone, right? You understand the difference? There's degrees of separation here.
Would you blame? Okay,
yeah, sure.
If I can finish my point, right? Like, if it were up to me, if I were in the driver's seat, I would cut off Vosh, I would cut off Hassan, I would cut off, and I would not work with these people for a wide variety, both of moral reasons and of strategic reasons, right? I think that working with these people hurts us electorally. But when it comes to Fuentes, you guys don't seem to have a problem with working even at a narrowly tailored thing. And even Counterpoints said he'd work with a narrow tailored thing. I think there are certain lines we should have where if you do these things or if you have these beliefs, right, that I can't work with you. Now, I'm not talking legally. I'm not talking any kind of legal censure or anything like that. But you know what? I can't actively work with you. I can have a conversation with you. I can talk with you. Yeah, I don't think Tucker Carlson should be canceled for that. But it does bring me a lot of fear when I see almost every Republican I like. Rob Noor, you tonight, Lactoid, even Counterpoints, right? You're saying, yeah, I could work with Nick Fuentes on a few things. I don't think you guys understand the threat that Nick Fuentes poses to the American project.
I don't think he poses it yet.
Wait, hold on. Let me respond. So, I think maybe I don't like your response, and here's why. If there was some third person who created an organization where I'm working in it and Nick Fuentes is working in it, if I choose to work in the organization, this is like I have control over the fact that I'm working in this organization. I could quit. So I also have like some kind of substantive control as to whether or not I'm working with Nick Fuentes. Would you have a problem if I joined an organization that Nick Fuentes was also a member of? I don't have the authority to remove him, but I join an organization that he's a part of. Both of us go out to events. We're both at these events. We're both pushing forward this narrow goal.
I didn't go.
I would say this is work.
I didn't go to any events that they went to. I didn't go to.
No, I think it's a good standard. Just have a third party, have a proxy that kind of oversees these people.
No,
as long as we're connected.
I think you guys are conflating things that shouldn't be conflated. Like, there is a very big difference between personally
direct one-to-one comparisons, having a proxy and working with this person who also works with this other bad person.
Different degrees. There's secondary orders and things like that. There's different degrees.
Identical.
When I say I'm working with this group decides we're going to also work with this. I say, don't do this. That's dumb, right? I could either do one of two things. I can lead the group. Therefore, that group is entirely influenced by this person, right? Or I could stay and provide a counterbalance and counter influence. There's a difference between this group existing. I know that they're working with these people. They have advertised they're working with these people, and then they invite me in. That's different. That's not what happened with Progressive.
So if I'm working with so if there's some third proxy organization that has some narrow goal, couldn't I just say the same thing too? Like, yeah, I'm going to work with Nick Fuentes to accomplish X, Y, Z.
Stated that you would work with him directly.
Hold up, let me respond. That there's some narrow goal that I'm working with Nick Fuentes on, just like you both of you as part of Progressive Victory work with Vosh to accomplish a very specific narrow goal. I fail to see how like this is different when I could just simply say like I am providing a counterweight to Nick Fuentes, right? Like I want to be part of the organization and work with Nick Fuentes because otherwise,
like
if I
Heritage
leave,
Foundation,
then Nick Fuentes is just going to have like it's just going to be his perspective as opposed to my perspective being the counterweight.
I can analogize it, and I would like to share a little bit of insight from my perspective.
Go ahead. Just before you do, Vosh and Nick Fuentes are not even comparable. Vosh
is worse. Vosh is worse. Vosh is worse. Yeah.
If you think Vosh is worse, then you are.
We're coming for you, communists.
Insane.
Just to be clear, the time is over for you people. It's going to be it's going to end one way or another. But you fucking communists, it's over for you.
Nation, you're insane.
So I want to do a little bit of I want to poke at it, and I also want to explain something. So let's say that if we made this on the right wing, okay, and let's say we had like a joint venture between, I don't know, like Heritage and then whatever the libertarian think tank is. I don't even know if there's a libertarian think tank, but let's just make one up.
Mises Institute.
Okay, Mises and Heritage are doing a joint venture. And then as a part of that joint venture, half of it is libertarian, half of it is Christian conservative, and there's even a schism within the Christian conservatives where there's Tucker Carlson and there's Nick Fuentes. Okay, then I would view this analogistically, and I also wouldn't be opposed to working towards a goal and trying to move things my way. When it came to PV specifically, I would say that PV probably started further left. DGG through admin, like they became a substantive amount of the administration within PV. And then also a significant amount of the volunteering and canvassing operations were DGG. They were Destiny. The only canvassing event that I know that Vosh or VGG were substantively involved in was the New York one. That's one that I also did not attend, which, by the way, is actually not on principle because JREG was going to be there, and I love JREG. I'm actually like a friend of, or I'm not a friend of JREG. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of JREG, and I heard he was going to be in New York, and I was like, man, I want to go to New York. So, anyways, but the point is, like, I think that I actually agree with Wick in reference to you can leave the organization completely, at which point it becomes something that you don't like. Or you can be a part of the organization and try to influence it from the inside. It's the same pragmatic.
So we can do that with an organization that we work with Nick Fuentes in.
Okay, well,
maybe.
I mean, I would say
just be clear,
if Nick
maybe
Fuentes wanted to rescue dogs.
Hold on, I want to answer from Connor. So you'd be okay then if we joined the organization, and you've already said before that you're okay with narrowly working with people. So this would not be inconsistent.
Yeah, let's use let's use an even more perfect example. Let's say that Nick Fuentes is 1 or 2% of the electorate, and that's who he's representative of. But the person that's running that has a strong chance of winning is a Hassan Piker clone. And he's in charge of the Democratic Party. Yeah, I wouldn't give two fucks if you had, if you were in a political coalition in order to stop Hassan Piker from coming to power in America.
See, that's very consistent. I agree.
Fuentes? Okay.
Well, the trick here is that like what you don't want to fall into is like the pure friend enemy distinction, which is what I think happened on the left. Where this is why I get so irritated with Soy Bill's comments, where basically vote blue no matter who turns into a blanket distinction. And because there's a hard line blanket distinction, then inevitably you just drift further and further and further left because you never draw any boundaries. I don't disagree that there's actually situations where you may need to form political coalitions with people that you have really serious disagreements with, but what you can't do is lose sight of the disagreements. Right, you need to go into those organizations and be.
That was the crux of this conversation, by the way.
No, everybody here agrees you can't lose track of the disagreements, and that's why Tucker Carlson pushed back.
I mean, Wick, I think this is what you were saying. Actually.
Maybe not the crux of the disagreement, but I think the crux of the conversation.
And you're like, no, this is wrong. We're not doing this, and you fight that fight. So I mean, I think that's the trick. The right has to understand what its moral center is. And understand that you might have to fight this fight on a day-to-day basis within your coalition.
Which is frustrating, just speaking from personal experience. Also, Lactoid, I think that I could get you to support more social spending if I reduced your individual tax rate. And what I mean by that is I took a look at the tax brackets for individuals.
I know, it's awful.
I was fucking horrified, okay? And
do you know how we live, Connor? You don't know how we live, okay?
Bro,
Connor, do you have any fucking idea how much tax I pay?
I need to share this.
Unbelievable.
So no. So I'm married. So if I make under 100K, my tax bracket is 12%, which is reasonable. I can pay 12%. I'm paying to be a part of American society. Who gives a shit? And then I checked out the single tax rate, okay? 0 to 50K is like 12 or something like that. Or it's like 0 to 10 is 10. 11 to 50 is 12. As soon as you hit 50, you get hit at 22%. And then if you get past 100K, you're at 24%. Bro, if I was like a lawyer
like
making
Bosch.
100K or making like 200K and I had worked my dick off to be there, I would be like, fuck these poor people. Let them eat rice and beans. I want to drive my motorcycle. I want to do cocaine. I want to go to the strip club.
Well, I don't do cocaine.
So realistically, I think that the way that we make Lactoid a liberal instead of a libertarian is we actually reduce the individual tax rate. So under 100K is 10%. Then 100K to 200K is like 15%. And then after that, you get into the 20% tax rate. And then that way,
debate at some point.
he becomes a liberal.
Hey, look, support that policy. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll go left.
Maybe.
I appreciate you making an effort. I really do appreciate you making an effort. I think 10% is extortionary for anybody for making under 100K after what they've had to deal with. I've been working since I was 14, so I was red pilled on the subject at like a very young age, and I mean, shoot, if we want to get it gets to the heart of the issue. There are people that we need to cut off. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, Ash, you mentioned earlier though that the people have, especially the younger generation, feels like they're unseen, unheard, and that they're being shafted. How do you think we deal with that unless we raise some money through taxes?
Okay, but you don't charge them 22% when they're making 60K
we're just not raising any money. Are you fucking insane? You are already just taking money. I mean, shoot, we print the money out anyways. We borrow the money to cover it. No, this is not. No, young people do not need to be taxed more.
Debate. We can have
so that's why I was going to go off on a different fucking subject, and you immediately fucking cut me off again after asking me a question, and where I was trying to divert away from that.
Wait, cut him off now. Dude. It's so funny.
It's my fault.
Yeah,
What's the question?
Okay, $10 from Doobie. $10 from Doobie to say when conservatives latch onto and defend lies or evils promoted by the traditional American narrative,
I was just fucking with you, buddy.
Because it leaves room for truth tellers on the other side to take disillusioned. Oh,
is that a question?
The search for $10 more. He gave me a few bucks. So give me.
This is about Columbus, I think.
$10 says the search for truth tellers willing to buck up against the dishonest mainstream is exactly what drives people to people like Fuentes. You're doing his work for him. This is why, and $10 more. This is why Americans should reject all forms of ethno-nationalism, by the way, including Zionism. Supporting it, despite the clear contradiction between American values and Zionism, pushes people towards Nick. And finally, $10 says Nick's views on white and Christian nationalism aren't much different than the average Zionist's views on Jewish, ethnic, and religious nationalism in Israel. Why do you think he's so much worse? Thank you for those $10. Okay.
Entitlements for old people need to completely disappear immediately.
Well,
we are no longer sacrificing. We are no longer sacrificing young people for the sake of the old.
Okay, that needs to be that with the Doobie two of his super chats need to be addressed. That one where he's talked about Zionism being the sort of accepted identity politics. I've heard Nick Fuentes brought this up in the interview, and I actually think it's a pretty convincing point, which is a lot of Zionists, right? And I mean, talking about Zionists in the sense of like there needs to be like a Jewish state. Like their logic is the same as Nick Fuentes's. And so when you criticize, like I think Nick Fuentes for having maybe this same ideology of like wanting an ethno state, the criticism that Nick Fuentes gives is, well, this is bullshit. Like identity politics for me, but not for you. I've heard this criticism multiple times. I think it's actually pretty cogent. Why is it okay to support ethnostatism anywhere in the world?
Well, and then that opens up a can of worms, because then we get into demographics of Israel, the Maghrebi, the Mizrahi, the Ashkenazi. Are the different ethnicities of Jews? Are they actually different ethnicities? 20% of Israel is Arab Muslim.
We can go off Israeli law, right? Israeli law, like,
and that's what he brought up in my chat, by the way. But we should probably pick that as next week's debate topic.
Yeah, we are.
Well, and the second thing, the second part is
Lactoid. You did have it out for us at 11. I want to try to keep that. But...
Oh, okay, sure. I'll push myself a few more seconds.
Yeah.
Columbus. We're talking about the truth tellers and the stories. I actually think, and this is a hot take, that because America is a colonial nation. And you have to, I think, in order to accept America, accept that colonialism was either good or at the very least necessary. And I think under that framework, you have to accept Columbus as either overall good or at least historically relevant person worthy of acknowledgement.
Okay. Gang, this has been an interesting discussion. I think it was informative. I think it was educational. And I'm happy that all of you decided to come by today and have that with me. I do appreciate it. I have links to all their descriptions in my YouTube channel. You can go to my YouTube description and you can click on their links and give them a follow, and you should, because they spent their time with us tonight. So spend some time, take 5 seconds, click on their links, give them a follow, and things like that. If you've enjoyed this content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're doing stuff like this all the time on this channel. Money's good. I like your money. Give it to me. I will spend it very irresponsibly. But I want to give each of these gentlemen final takes, final thoughts, and they can shout themselves out if they want. I'm going to start with Lactoid and get Ryan have the last word, and we'll just kind of go around. Go ahead, Lactoid.
Yeah, I'm Lactoid. You can find me on Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I think during this conversation, I don't know, I think that my point's been made pretty clear. I mean, just to reiterate, for all of you wonderful fellows out there and fellas, I think conversation is good. I think that after watching the entire interview, I thought it was a fascinating interview. I think Tucker Carlson did a good job. I actually do like Tucker Carlson. I think that he is an effective orator. I think that he's smart, and I think that I'm not trying to fucking glaze him, but I think he's a lot better than a lot of the commentators that people tell me is okay to like, and that that I should be liking. And Nick Fuentes said a bunch of shit I disagree with. Like I said, there's some of the shit that he said that I do agree with, like especially that shit at the end on feminism, pretty based. But if you haven't seen the interview, I would advise that you do see the interview. I think you'll learn a lot. I also would advise that you watch the 1964 Face the Nation interview with Che Guevara, because that's also a fascinating interview. I think it's good to be worldly, and I think it's good to learn things about people, even if you happen to disagree with them.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Counterpoints.
Yeah, hi. So I think that my objections are I don't want to cancel anybody. I don't want to remove anybody from the public discourse. However, what I don't like is Trojan horsing bad ideas through sanitized language. And I think that Tucker Carlson is guilty of that. I think Nick Fuentes is guilty of that. I have no problems with the backlashes that they're enduring. And also, I think that Tucker is less of a good faith actor than Lactoid believes, but that's a fight for a different day. I also would argue that people need to be aware of doomsday prophets. Alternative media politics is filled with doomsday prophets, and you need to be careful of emotional manipulation. Not only that, but if we're talking about the right wing, people who believe in institutions and technocracy and organization and incremental change, we have to come up with the solutions to the problems that we're all facing that are fueling radicalization. That includes, in my opinion, wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and the dissolution of the social fabric. And those problems have to be addressed, or else we're going to continue to see people falling into radical pipelines. If you enjoyed anything that I said tonight, then check out Counterpoints Politics. That's my home channel, but I'm also live on Valor Media Network. Monday through Friday, I am live through from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And then I'm posting VODs on the Counterpoints Politics. So thank you for having me, Wick. It was a blast.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it, and thanks for being here. And gang, if you don't follow him, the sky will fall, the world will end, fire will rain. Just remember.
And Nick Fuentes will win.
It's true.
That's
so
true.
You have to. Let's give it to Ash. Go ahead.
Yeah, this conversation has made me far more optimistic, much like the Tucker and Nick interview did. My experience with neocons is that they're completely incorrigible. Insist on calling you anti-Semitic if you don't agree to any amount of money going to Israel or what have you. Can never admit their wrongs or faults, but here Connor did, Ryan did, and that's really exciting. I thought this would be a struggle session and loop on something Tucker did or didn't say for the entire time, but people came to a conclusion on it. So I think everybody understands that season of losing gracefully is over in American politics. It's done. I have a brief recommendation for the right wing, for the people who feel like Nick might be shutting them out. Don't give up. But all you have to do is come to the table, have something to offer. Do not throw up your hands and complain that the policies you never really implemented aren't accepted well. It's not, again, that season of American politics is just over. And I think that this coalition is going to either vote Democrat or vote Republican. It might switch them back and forth every term. And if you would like to take advantage of it, you just have to go back to the basics of exchanging ideas and benefits with other people. So it's a pleasure speaking with you all. This was great.
Hey, thank you for being here. Check him out, gang. I have a link to his channel in my description. And finally, last but certainly not least, Ryan Mullally, please.
Thanks, Wick, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, I thought this was actually a very productive conversation, and it actually shows what we were talking about, which is that if you come from a place of similar starting values, you can navigate through some difficult waters and get somewhere at the end of it. And my criticism of the Tucker interview, I think, boiled down to that singular point, which is that there was a red flag that showed an ideological disconnect and that he didn't pursue that. And I think he should have. But again, that's not something you cancel someone over. You're just pointing out that there was a flaw in the interview that I think was a serious one. But nonetheless, people have bad interviews. This happens. We move on. And I do think that it's important for the right to start coalescing around a strong narrative and a strong understanding about what we think the country is, who we think we are. That's why I talk about natural rights all the time. That's why I talk about the American founding all the time. Because, if you look today on X, what's the thing that everyone's talking about? Like Connor's saying, Trump got a black eye today. I think he did. But the thing that my feed's all about for some reason is Hassan fucking Piker saying he has no patriotism in his heart for America while parading around China and talking about how awesome he loves it over there. Now, here's the thing. That's what fucking happens if you never draw lines and you never say like, yeah, we might have a shared short-term goal, but we do not have the same values, and make that fucking clear in a conversation, because apparently that's okay now to say, all right, I have no patriotism for America, but China's awesome. That's the thing I don't want to have happen to the right. And the only way that we can avoid that is by understanding what our morals are and drawing clear lines around them. And if you want to see an example of how fucking terrible this could be, watch the incredibly funny debate I did with Pisco. It's on my channel. Gen Z attorney and Non-Fawn also joined on Monday, in which it's not going to be a perfect quote, but as I recall, Pisco, when I was describing the values in the Declaration of Independence, referred to them as presuppositional Christian Darth Dawkins garbage. So there is a disconnect in values. The right does need to win, but we need to win in the correct way. I'm Ryan Mullally. I do law and philosophy. I have a baby YouTube channel, which is somehow growing, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. So please continue sub. It would make my day. Anyway, it's been a real pleasure, Wick.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And just for everyone's knowledge, Nick Fuentes also idolizes China and wants America to be more China-like. He has said that in multiple occasions. He just likes authoritarianism. Him and Hassan have a podcast together. It's going to be they don't have.
That would be the world's greatest bromance.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks again, gang.
We got to kick this guy out for not being racist enough.
And I will leave.
Come on,
you guys, and I'll see you guys next week. We'll do something next week. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
See you guys,
buddy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am still going to be hanging out with you guys, so be sure to like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. So Dingus McBingus, the brother of Dongus McBongus, donated 5, saying, plot twist, this guy is that Twin Rabbits guy from the Mass Grave debate. I actually loved his voice. I loved his voice. I thought it was an excellent podcast voice. Well, QC John with $100 super chat. Absolutely oiling tonight. Thank you. This is for some future content. The new girl hottest and coggers need to know the lore of the demon that is Mama and the hero that is Connor Nazi. Sorry, Christian, I owe you a beer for the damage this will cause you psychologically, but the young need to see it. So we need to pick. Either we do that tomorrow morning, because $100 is $100, man. You give me $100, I'm not gonna get naked. I'm not gonna fillet you, but that's a lot of money. So we need to decide if we're doing that tomorrow, or we need to decide if we do that like Monday during story time. I don't know. We'll see. Grassroots for 20, do what I do, tell everyone to be nice to their voice-activated toasters, and maybe they won't put the shock collar on you when they take you out for walks. Be nice to your robots. Grassroots says, if you're a fascist, you are half a communist. If you are a communist, you're half a fascist. Hassan Piker versus Trump is the Spider-Man meme. Now, I do think what you're saying is that authoritarianism is a part of both of them. Games are for Kids 91 for $20 says, since Wick ruined my super chat, I'll post it here. Dems having 99% against Fuentes. The Democrats' ability to lose is unlosable. Elections is unparalleled. or to lose in unlosable elections is unparalleled. That's anonymous chatter. I agree. Thank you, King. Thank you for the 20. And yeah, never underestimate the Democrats' ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. So let me go ahead and check in with chat, probably around here. Frozen Knight says, didn't Tucker basically say that about Russia? What, that he glazed it? I guess so. Evan says, thank you, boss. Of course. I always want to hang out. I want to hang out with my chat, have some parasocial love. Jonah says, woo, we get some parasocial time. Speaking of which, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. But also, if you don't have them, don't worry about it. We're having a great month. Just type into chat, hey, Connor, what about this? Hey, Connor, have you seen this? Hey, Connor, blah, 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 blah. I'll try to read it. I'll try to respond to it. Christian Blair says, getting the right to actually care about the Constitution. Well, that would be a start. I need to get some chicken. I had some chicken and rice today with hot sauce. It was delicious. I used lemon pepper. Imagine how much Fuentes and Hassan would talk about Destiny if they had a podcast. I actually think that would be brilliant. Fuentes, Hassan Piker, and Destiny having a three-way podcast would be bananas. That was a good panel. I did enjoy it. It was actually like pretty, I don't know. It wasn't focused specifically on the topic, but people weren't strawmanning the fuck out of each other. And then also, that guy kind of technocratic shamed me, which I thought was hilarious, where he was like, oh, don't be a pussy. Give me your ideas. And then I started with one of my ideas, and he was like, boo, I hate that idea. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, what do you want? And he was like, I want you to cater to me, a working class white person. And I was like, oh, well, that's a different conversation. Oh, man. So Hans Mayer says, Hassan is a fucking armchair wannabe revolutionary. Did Ryan just call himself correct or right? I'm not sure. I liked Ash Vosham all. Yeah, no, I actually like that guy. I like Ash. I thought Ash was funny. He's a little bit autistic, but, you know, aren't we all? Cause and Effect says, I can't believe the guy that brought it was a bullshit question to say, who's better to run New York, Hassan or Fuentes? Okay, I wanted to explain this to Wick, but I didn't have the opportunity to do so. I think I've brought this up before, and I hope you guys can appreciate the analogy. House cats allegedly will eat you, okay? If they were physically large enough to kill you and eat you, house cats would. But they're reliant on you for food, and they're too small to actually kill you. And so analogize it this way. I think that Nick Fuentes and Hassan Piker are house cats, but the more political attention and capital and money that you give them, the bigger and bigger and bigger they get. And eventually they're not going to be house cats and they're going to eat your fucking face. So what happened with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement was that Republicans, in order to win, they fed and fed and fed and fed and fed Donald Trump. And eventually Donald Trump ate their face by turning the Republican Party into a pedophilic fucking joke. Okay. So I don't want that to happen on the left. And I think you guys have seen me advocate that for the past 2 years. However, what's interesting about our political moment in time is that Donald Trump has destroyed the Republican Party so hard that now people are living in the ashes of the Republican Party and they're like, what next? And so since they're asking what next, maybe we could get in there, throw some elbows and actually have some influence. Subry Keller says, yes, I think we do have to educate the younglings about Demon Mama. Good. Now tell me tomorrow or Monday during story time. Short says, did you see the new Destiny drama slot? Lauren De Laguna confronted him in person. Lol. But isn't Steven in Texas? How did they bump into each other? Were they in Miami or were they in Texas? Christian Blair says, I've seen more people do a complete political 180 in the last decade. Yep, not me. Big Mac says, brah, I about died when that motherfucker didn't know the housing crisis cost more than the war on terror. I can't. Listen, man, but there's a common narrative with the young people that the war on terror bankrupted the country, and it's true. It cost $8 trillion. It cost $8 trillion. Okay, that's a shitload of cash. I think our budget, our deficit is approaching 40 trillion. I think it's around like 36 right now. What is the United States current federal debt? What is the U.S. current federal debt? Is 38 trillion. So we're approaching 40. So 8 is nothing to shake a stick at. Round that up to 10, it's about a quarter of the debt. But when you add in COVID, when you add in other things that have happened over the past few years, when you add in entitlement spending, the war on terror is important to explain the debt, but it's not the end all be all. Christian Blair says, only if we give Destiny a firearm and willingness to go to prison. Oh, for that podcast? I gotcha. Remove the podcast part, and then I'm interested. Gotcha. Grassroots20 says, how in the name of fudge do we fix this stupid name stuff on this channel? No idea. We're all going to suffer. Big Leafy Tree says, Counterpoints, that as someone who's broken from conservative media, how do you see the general conservative media environment? I see Daily Wire and the Zyocons and the Normicons and the Boomercons who were around Fox News. I view them, unfortunately, as the more sane party, whereas I think that Newsmax, Groypers, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, I know that Dave Smith is a libertarian, but Dave Smith, I view those guys as kind of like the schizo right. And so now we're stuck between the Fox News right and the schizo alt media right, and so we kind of have to fight it out. The problem is that the Fox News right has swept for the schizo right for so long that now they don't even know how to be normal. What used to happen was Fox News used to lie to your face, but they still tried to tell you to try to be normal. Now Fox News, in order to compete with the schizo right for attention, they tell you to be schizo right. They don't know how to be normal anymore. Ghosty, I think, but it's like a 6 host 2, Ghost 2. Why do you think it's so hard for the right to denounce Fuentes just straight up like Ben does? Because Nick Fuentes criticizes economic issues faced by young men, and he also criticizes our relationship with Israel. And even if you don't want to go to the extremes that he does, there are solid things to be criticized about the crisis of young men and the geopolitical withdrawal of the United States from the world stage. Wordsmith Andy says they are both pussies, but eventually they will be giant pussies. Kappa. True. Pedo support is next. Pog. Bruh. Yeah. Christian Blair says, believe it or not, Destiny beat Connor at the pistol range. No, he's a marksman. Steven, I'm a cop. Okay. I'm a former Marine and a police officer. What I've trained for is somebody to be about 10 to 20 yards away and for me to blast them, for me to go bop, 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 and for me to vaguely hit center mass. That's what I've trained for. What Steven has done is legitimate pistol marksmanship, where you use the frame of your body in order to hold the pistol like perfectly still. You control your breathing. You line up a perfect sight alignment in sight picture, and then you do a slow, steady squeeze as you're firing the pistol. And that's what he does successfully. So, yeah. So Steven is a good marksman. De Laguna sounds like a Texas name or a Louisiana name. She was in Texas. She's the crazy obsessed one. Well, then how did he bump into her in Texas? That's actually kind of alarming to me. Texas is a big place. Big Mac says, I'm a liberal and I'm out here trying to tell young Republicans Bush was bad, but he wasn't that bad. Laugh my ass off. That's where I do feel that Lactoid has been poisoned. Subry Keller says, I don't know how to say this nicely, but the Republican Party asked to be taken over because they really didn't want to listen to the report that they should not be racist. Sure. And they were like, I'm going to prove it by deporting 10 million people. I was shooting Destiny's pistols. 8 trillion isn't bankrupting us. I mean, it is something. Yes. Check out the unfunded liabilities. No, I do not need anything to depress me. Anonymous Chatter says, I vote for Demon Mama tomorrow. I'll be gone on Monday unless it'll be uploaded as VOD. Of course it'll be a VOD. But yeah, we'll check in with chat tomorrow. There was a report after Obama won on how they could become demographically more plausible for the future. And they said, no, we're going to double down on racism, which is so funny because now they're still polling better with Hispanics. Hassan would never touch blood. If a revolution breaks out, he would never leave his basement. I agree. He would cover clips from the safety of his own basement. Schizophrenia is worse than misinformed. I agree. Christian Blair says, I would like to think Destiny would if he lost any more attorney money, but unfortunately prison separates the males from BPD sloids is how I'll say that word. Fox News has always been that way. I agree. Big Mac says, yo, anyone else feel like twinks and tomboys are marginalized by trans issues? Of course. Of course they are. Of course they are. Dave Smith is not in any way a libertarian. Well, he claims it, so sorry. Bud123 says, you like Evil Vosh more than OG Vosh? Yeah, OG Vosh went into his fortress and he never came back out. At least Evil Vosh comes out and plays. Ghost says, Ghosty, you got it right. Oh, cool. Demon Mama is 100% story time. I will literally set aside time to remember the good old days and see if I can find someone to watch it with me. Based. My issue with that is I don't remember how much I spurred, and I think that might be painful, but who knows? Connor's a cop. He's trained to unload, not necessarily aim at dimes from yards away. Yeah, I mean, I can do both, but I get lazy and I get bored, and then I mag dumb. Christian Blair says Connor was trained to mag dump. Oh shit, Vosh, I didn't say Simon Says is half right. Yeah, I know. That's why that meme is so funny. Because he's like, I didn't say Simon Says. Like, it's not that. It's a semi-auto pistol, so it goes bop, 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 bop. But yeah, I think bop, 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 bop. That might be 7 or 8 rounds. That's, if you come after me, that's what I'm going to put in you. Bread tumors want us to do their dirty work. True. Scrolling. Big leafy tree. It'll be very funny if calling me racist made me racist gets spread over to calling me a pedo made me a pedo. Bruh. Contact Megyn Kelly. You just gave her new talking point. Hassan would be like a Jew in Israel in a revolution in his bunker. Jeez. Please read my Nick Fuentes comment. I was responding to you comment about house cats. They were big pussies. Bro, I can't scroll up. There's still 120 people. Type it out again. That was the most chill I have ever seen MAGA Ryan. Yeah, well, he's normally in a struggle session with liberals, you know? Eben says, that's his only good clip. I didn't say Simon Says. I did enjoy it. Subry Keller says, I really feel uncomfortable that America has its own paper bag test. It's almost as if everything that African Americans try to cast aside, America goes, nah, we're going to do that stuff too. I'm not quite sure what you're saying. It's almost as if everything that African Americans try to cast aside, America goes, nah, we're going to do that stuff too. I don't know what you're saying. But fair enough. I read it. Say fuck my life. Fuck my life. Cause and Effect says, what's the Simon Says mean, Daniel Shaver? Yeah, basically Vosh is making fun of cops, and he's saying, like, you know, a cop will play Simon Says with you, and then if you don't comply and get it perfectly, he'll blast you. And he does like basically the clip is, I didn't say Simon Says, and he makes a machine gun noise. That's way better than what I just did. All right, I'm going to thank everybody again one more time. So Dingus McBingus, Weld QC John, thank you for the oil. Grassroots Hegemon, thank you for the oil as always. And thank you to Anonymous Chatter, a.k.a. Games Are for Kids 91. We did catch up. We did have 120 people cross-platform. I think 135 at the peak. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I will be back tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll do another normal stream. We'll do half of the day, probably reacting to whatever is coming out in reference to the Epstein stuff and or whatever the hot news, drama, or debate is of the day. Somebody did send me the Andrew Wilson chat where he did I think it was Send Patty. He sent me the Andrew Wilson debate where he went up against that black chick that he failed to open the olive jar with originally. And he said that it was actually pretty good. And Andrew Wilson spurgs out a few times. So that could be fun. Alternatively, we could do the Demon Mama debate. I do owe Weld QC John that debate. So we'll either do it now or we'll do it early next week. Either way, we're going to do it soon. And then, I mean, that's really about it. I'm just kind of waiting for the Epstein stuff to break and see what's going on there. Cops on Nostromo be like, I didn't say Simon Says, takes your skin. Exactly. Big Leafy Tree says, Dear Connor, you're okay. Keep doing your thing. Thank you. I appreciate that. I like being okay. Cause and Effect says, the Simon Says was literally Daniel Shaver. If you see that body cam footage, I've seen it. It's bad. It was very bad. Soy. All right, fair enough. Good night, y'all. Sad internet losers. Until next time, I'll see you in 9 hours, bro. Or whatever time it is. Let's go, baby. Chick brings up Andrew Wilson's wife as a 3-time baby mama, and he flips and calls her a sniz licker. Whoa. Whoa, that's a spicy meatball. Wow, that is brutal. Sniz licker. Dang. That's crazy. Subry says, so there's a lightness test of skin tone that unfortunately was a thing, kind of still a thing in the black community, where the lighter you are, the more power you can hold in society, KMN. Interesting. I didn't know. I mean, I've heard of colorism. I've heard of black people having a preference for European features and lighter skin. I didn't know that that was like any kind of legitimate meme. Not the cop even shooting him, but the head cop giving up the fucked up instructions. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. All right. Soy was you. Okay. Thanks. What is a sniz? It's a vagina. A snookin' or sniz. It's from South Park. Well, I mean, I'm sure it pre-existed South Park, but it was Hillary Clinton. They did an episode of 24 on South Park where there's a nuke in Hillary Clinton's vagina and they call it a snook in her sniz. So, yeah. Grassroots says, good night, get some rest so you can be woken up by your toasters. True. I'm going to leave. Have a good night, Connor. See you next time. I'm going to leave after these comments. Now I'm going to leave after a bit more comments. That's me, bro. I keep interacting with chat. I love my chat. Tony Timpa body camera footage was just as bad as George Floyd, but somehow it's racism rather than incompetence. Interesting. Knight's Frozen says, yeah, she spurgs out after insulting her over and over. She finally said something back and he broke. There you go. Cause and Effect says, Nick Fuentes had dinner with Trump. He and Hassan are no longer house cats. They are growing into leopards. I agree with that. Although Trump did disavow him after that dinner. Ghosty says, my friend who grew up in Bangladesh confirms the light skin thing. The lighter your skin, you get treated better. Yeah, colorism. I know colorism is a thing for sure. I just didn't know that you would use the paper bag. Rightoid was mad his wife got called out as a slut and he calls a lib girl a lesbian. Yeah. All right. Good night, y'all. All right. Go watch your other favorite streamers. I parasocially love you guys. Thank you for the financial support. Go get some rest. Minge. Minge is a great name. All right. I'm gonna go double check my Warhammer upload. I parasocially love you guys. Check out Counterpoints Sci-Fi. Check out Counterpoints Star Wars. I'll see you guys tomorrow.